It all begins with a young man who received a mission from a goddess. His task was quite simple: save a world that was dying. So, the young warrior did his best to achieve this goal. Tired and wounded, he wonders if the great battle is finally over. Just then, he spits a large amount of red fluid onto the ground. His body was at its limit, and he could barely stay on his feet. As his strength fades, he realizes he can no longer move. Then, the young warrior finally collapses to the ground and looks up at the sky. He is completely exhausted after such a long and difficult fight. All he wanted at that moment was to rest for a little while. With that, his eyes close, and he simply accepts his fate. But a notification appears, showing the young man's name as Kang Hambit, and he has already been through 55 cycles of regression and reincarnation. At this, the protagonist becomes furious for having suffered so much for nothing yet again, until someone touches his head and says that this life was a long one. Our hero is confused by this comment and looks up. There, he sees the goddess who sent him to that world in the first place. She suggests a reincarnation for a change, and the young man explodes with rage. Despite her divine appearance, the deity has a completely expressionless look. He remembers that it was this same woman who summoned him, or rather, kidnapped him. It's been so long that the young man doesn't even remember when it happened. The goddess just threw him into another world and told him to find our port, and that's how his cycle of endless suffering began. No matter what he did, the result was always the same. For 55 lifetimes, he found no clues about our port. Fed up with it all, he yells at the goddess to go do the mission herself. But she says that if she did that, the world would be destroyed, leaving him shocked. The deity finds it strange, as his mental restorations should have been perfect. The young man admits that technically, she isn't wrong about that. However, the memories of his past lives still haunted him. The goddess then asks if he wants to try regressing again, but he just yells furiously. In response, the woman says his request is impossible because she's a girl. After a moment, the deity reveals it was just a joke. At this, he turns around and asks what she meant by that. She explains that because he did his best, he has earned the right to go back. The young man can't believe it, as he failed to save the world 55 times. Then she raises her hand and says she's sending him back immediately. With that, his feet begin to disappear, and he asks her to wait a second. He gets desperate because he still had many questions to ask the deity. Ignoring his protests, the woman just says she expects great things from him, and with a flash of light, the young man is finally sent back home. Soon after, he wakes up to his mother's voice calling his name. Sitting up in bed, he complains of a terrible hangover headache. 18 months have passed since our hero returned to reality. He spent so much time in other worlds that his memories were all jumbled. Looking around, he remembers he was kidnapped the day before his enlistment. So the 18 months passed, and he was discharged yesterday. Thinking about it all again makes him extremely angry and frustrated. If he counts the times he served in past lives, this was his 6th tour of duty. With that, he laments that adapting to modern life is very difficult. The young man thinks his future looks extremely bleak at the moment, but someone calls for him, and he gets up, saying he's on his way. Picking up his phone, he sees a message from a friend asking if he's going out. The protagonist replies that he's too old and tired for that stuff. But his friend doesn't give up and starts teasing him to get him to come out. Even with the teasing, he doesn't seem very interested and ignores it. This friend looked out for him in the army, so he feels like he owes him one. At that, his buddy says he has a discharge gift for our hero. The mention of a gift piques the young man's curiosity. Arriving at the meeting spot, a voice calls out to him, and he smiles at the person. This is Ju Yaun Wu, his senior in the army, but who is actually 5 years younger. Kang Hanbit comments that they drank a lot yesterday, but his friend looks great. Then the protagonist gets straight to the point and asks about the promised gift. Since his friend was stalling, he pretends to leave to hurry him up. At that, Yan Wu reveals the gift to a card for a game called Record Project. It's a level 2 membership card for a virtual reality game with synchronization. He hands the card to our hero as a discharge present. His friend says it cost 5 million won, But to Hambit, that's nothing. Joking, the young man asks if he's hiring a guard dog, but he declines as he already has a job and his family needs the money. His friend then wants to know if making cash is his top priority right now. He confirms he should be working, and his buddy calls him boring. Annoyed, the young man grabs his friend's hair, shouting that romance doesn't pay the bills. As he's being pulled, Yan Wu says you can get rich playing this game. His friend claims he's talking about hundreds of millions, and Hambit becomes interested. Hearing this, our hero's expression suddenly changes completely. In a serious tone, he politely asks for all the details of the proposal. Yan Wu starts explaining about the game's developer, Team Zero. He says that the game's creator left all the rights to whoever clears it first. With this bombshell news, the in-game currency simply skyrocketed in value. Even large corporations are investing heavily to try and beat the game. Our hero listens to everything very carefully and seems to be pondering the offer. Yan Wu adds that even solo players still have a chance to win. After thinking for a bit, he finally decides he'll try his luck. He thanks his friend for the enormous trouble he went through to get everything. Excited by the response, his buddy suggests they start right away. With that, the two arrive at a large special event area for the game. The place is packed, and the protagonist is startled by the crowd. With no patience, he simply grabs his friend and drags him through the throng. Hambit says the first thing to do is buy the beginner's guide. His friend grabs the guide and explains that the game is cruel to newcomers. He insists that his buddy buy the book, but Hambit wants to take a look. Upon opening the guide, a strange light begins to shine, leaving him confused. Inside the book, he sees the old mission from the goddess, to find Arport. Our hero reflects on the deity's words and the reason for his freedom. Seeing his buddy just standing there, he calls his name, worried about his reaction. Startled, he realizes that the woman has thrown him into another trap. His friend wants to know why he has such a serious look, and the young man has a question. With the guide in hand, he asks if his buddy knows about Team Zero. His friend explains that the information is confidential, and only one woman ever appears. So, the young man starts to suspect that the goddess is behind the game. Closing his eyes, he wonders why all of this is happening again. With that, he remembers the past, and when he was first summoned, he recalls that the world he was sent to wasn't just a game. The feeling of his first battle is still vivid in his memory. He also remembers the agonizing pain of passing on for the first time. Every time, the deity would appear to remind him of his constant failure. Back in the present, he wonders if he's about to enter the same nightmare. Tired of it all, he refuses to accept the same fate again, so he pulls himself together and asks how long the delivery will take. His friend replies that it takes 2 hours and asks for his phone to install the apps. At that moment, his friend notices the book is all crumpled in the protagonist's hand. Yan Wu says goodbye and arranges to meet inside the game later. The young man says it'll be quick, but he knows that rushing won't help now. Upon returning home, he finds a box delivered right in front of him. With the box in his hands, he reflects on the expensive price of the equipment. He opens the package and finds a state of the art immersion rig. Sitting on his bed, he begins to set up the console so he can play. Since he's still alone, he locks his bedroom door for safety. Thinking it's better to be safe, he puts the connection bracelet on his arm. Fully equipped, he lies down on the bed, ready to start the immersion. The system begins to scan his data and start the character creation process. Inside the game, his body feels heavy, but he can't change his appearance. Thinking it's a game bug, he looks for the button to restart the system. Suddenly, the system shows an error in his character creation. He's shocked and wonders if this is another one of the deity's tricks. With a flash of light, the young man is finally logged into the game. The first thing he sees are some seagulls flying in the blue sky. Right after, the sound of ocean waves reaches his ears. Looking around, he realizes he's in a very familiar place. Intrigued by the situation, the young man approaches a window to look at himself. There, he sees a face he hasn't seen in a long time, leaving him surprised. In disbelief at what he's seeing, the protagonist touches the glass, shocked. This was exactly how he looked during his last regression. He wonders if this is some kind of hidden message from the deity. A voice echoes in his mind, telling him to start all over from scratch. At that moment, a notification pops up with a friend request from Loper. The young man is confused by the message and tries to remember the name. He remembers that this is Yan, Wu's nickname, and looks for how to add him. Before he can do anything, a familiar voice calls out to him excitedly. His friend appears with a flashy avatar and complains about his buddy being late. His friend's nickname is Luxurious Loper, and he seems very proud of it. Yan, Wu asks why he didn't change his appearance, and the young man plays it cool. His buddy says the look suits him, but is curious about his nickname. Upon opening the menu, he sees his nickname is Black Dragon, level 1. The protagonist is horrified by the name, while his friend bursts out laughing. Furious, he yells that he didn't choose this, but his buddy says it's permanent. Hearing this, our hero simply freaks out with anger over the situation. He grabs his friend, who tells him to check his notifications first. Not understanding a thing, the young man angrily asks what he's talking about. A window asks if he agrees to have his gameplay broadcast live. His friend explains that he streams regularly on a platform for the game. He realizes this is his buddy's plan to make money off of him. The proposal doesn't seem to please our hero very much, who makes a sour face. Reluctantly, he agrees to do the stream and questions the profit split. With a smile, his friend asks the young man to just trust him this time. With that, Yan, Wu starts the live stream and introduces his new partner, Black Dragon. The chat immediately starts making fun of his nickname, making him feel awkward. The mean comments continue, and our hero gets more and more irritated. His buddy tries to calm him down, reminding him that the goal is to make money. The protagonist gets a grip and asks what their first step in the game is. Yan, Wu shows that the system has recommended 3 skills for beginners. Without much thought, the young man just touches one of the skill cards. His friend gets excited and curious to see what he'll get from it. An intense blue light shines from the card, surprising both players. Instead of a single card, several others start appearing out of nowhere, completely shocked. They don't understand what's happening. The cards continue to multiply, and now glow with a golden light. Yanwu is panicking while his friend faces the situation seriously. The chat explodes with accusations of hacking, and his buddy asks how he did that. With a keen eye, the young man seems to be starting to understand the situation. He stares at the cards, and his friend asks if something is wrong. Yanwu is speechless in the face of such a bizarre event in the game. Excited, he shouts that the protagonist got a secret skill. His buddy realizes it's not just one, but several rare skills. He goes crazy over the luck, but Hammett says they're just recommendations. Observing the icons, the young man realizes he knows all of those techniques. With a smile, he thinks that this isn't a bad start to his journey. His plan is to use these skills to grow and understand this world. That way, he can finally uncover the goddess's true intentions. To start, he decides to choose fire magic, since it's the most basic. With his choice made, he asks his friend where they can find quests. Yanwu is surprised by his choice and asks if magic is a good idea. Immediately, the chat goes back to making fun of his nickname with the choice of a mage. The protagonist doesn't understand why they're mocking his choice of magic. His friend explains that proficiency is everything in the game, and magic is the hardest. A player only knows they've leveled up their magic when a star appears at the end. Our hero remembers the past and how much talent was needed to learn. Among all the skills, magic was the most complex to master. The young man asks where he can choose a master to learn the skill. Confused, his buddy doesn't understand what he's talking about right now. He tries to calm the chat down, explaining that his friend is a complete beginner. In the game, you learn skills from quest books and achievements. Surprised, he realizes the world has become more practical with skill books. He remembers the exhaustive training with his old, tough master. She would always tell him to get up and continue training without a break. His friend calls him to go to the general store, but he already knows the way. He explains that you buy fire magic from the merchant named Julio. The blonde questions why they would go to that guy, and he says it's for the book. He starts bad, mouthing the merchant, calling him a complete scammer. Just then, Julio donates 1,001, and Yaun Wu thanks him for the live donation. Hambit doesn't understand, and his friend explains that he earned money too. The young man's innocent reaction to earning money amuses the entire live chat. His friend asks if 1,001 is a lot of money to him, but it's just business. The young man says he would save the money instead of his friend if he had to. Putting the joke aside, he says they need to go to Julio's right away. Impatiently, the blonde hurries his friend so they can get to the shop, but the young man says he first needs to find his magic master. The master's name is Atsubal, and her image appears on the skill card. Seeing the woman's picture, his buddy is completely shocked and stops in his tracks. His friend says the idea is cool, but he's going to get made fun of for it. He explains that Atsubal is just a quest NPC who gets arrested for theft. Since she was pretty, many players requested more quests with her. Tired of explaining, the young man says he'll just show him the results first, and the chat complains about his stubbornness, but Hambit remains silent, so he decides to go to Julio and follow the path everyone suggests. The chat gets excited about the bet, and the young man accepts the proposed challenge. With a smile, he says he can do a dance if he's wrong. With that, he tells his friend to follow him, but the blonde questions the path. The protagonist replies that they're just taking a quick shortcut. His buddy asks how he knows the way, and the young man says it's a hunch. With that, they finally arrive at the shop of the merchant named Julio. From a distance, our hero observes the man behind the shop counter. Seeing the merchant's face, the young man remembers his past with him. With a clenched fist, he shows all his pent-up anger. A memory of being arrested because of him comes back to his mind. His friend explains that the game has a lot of freedom and serious consequences. Seeing his buddy's dark expression, Yaun Wu calls out to him, concerned. Without saying a word, he starts walking towards Julio's shop. He enters the establishment with a threatening and determined aura. His steps are firm, and he heads straight for the merchant. The man greets him with a fake smile, calling him a customer. In a swift motion, the young man grabs the vendor's tie tightly. He pulls him close and asks how he's still alive like that. With his eyes glowing, he calls him a useless piece of trash and intimidates him. Yaun Wu watches the scene, completely shocked by his friend's attitude. In disbelief, he realizes his buddy is in big trouble. Hambit continues to stare down the merchant with a look of contempt. The man begs him to let go and asks what he wants to buy. The protagonist glares at him for another second before making a decision. Suddenly, he lets go of the vendor, who falls back, frightened. The merchant says the last magic book was just sold. As an apology, he offers to recommend another shop, but for that, he sets a condition and asks for a favor in return. Julio says that a thief broke into the shop while he was taking a nap. He shows a medallion and accuses his rival, Atsubal, of being the culprit. With a fake smile, he asks the protagonist for help in catching her. A quest appears to arrest the woman, and the chat is completely confused. Hambit wonders how the merchant can turn a lie into a quest. He remembers that in the past, the woman was his master, but he got arrested. Back then, he was thrown in prison for being Atsubal's apprentice. With false evidence, he had no chance to defend himself against the guards. Back in the present, the young man asks what happens to the thief. He glares at Julio and says the future of the shop seems pretty obvious now. With a clenched fist, he gets ready to put his plan into action. The merchant smiles and asks what the customer thought of his proposal. Before he can finish, Hambit walks past him and goes to the back of the shop. The two are shocked by the young man's attitude as he ignores the counter. There, he grabs a hidden bag of money and calls out to Julio. Holding the bag, he asks if the man was really robbed. With that, the quest changes, and now the objective is to arrest the scammer, Julio. The merchant turns bright red and admits the young man is pretty smart. Angrily, he says he has nothing to sell and tells him to leave. Without a second thought, our hero lands a solid kick right in his face. The man is sent flying by the force of the blow and hits the wall. His friend and the Chad are shocked that the scammer really was Julio. Suddenly, some city guards burst into the shop to see about the noise. Hambit closes his eyes as his plan worked, and it's all over. A cutscene begins, and the guards lead the merchant away, tied up and arrested. The two friends just watch as the man is taken to prison. Behind bars, the scammer laments being found out. The protagonist opens his eyes, satisfied with the result of his plan. He realizes that things are different now from his past life. With a sigh of relief, he recovers from the tension of the moment. With a look of satisfaction, he stares at the card of the quest he completed. The quest is complete, and he receives 500 gold as a reward. His friend is shocked while the protagonist wonders if it's all a coincidence. Wu wants to know how he knew everything, and the young man thinks of an excuse. He knows the truth wouldn't be accepted, so he decides to make up a story. With a smile, he says he read a similar novel and just took a guess. The blonde believes the story, and our hero feels relieved by that. Suddenly, an anonymous user makes a donation of 10,000 won to the stream. His friend says thanks and praises his game partner's intelligence and strength. Seeing the excited chat, he wonders if streams are always like this. At that, he decides to leave the social part to his buddy and focus on what he does best. They head to Atsubal's shop while the blonde seems worried. His friend says the forums are going to blow up with this new NPC quest. The young man thinks that now, everyone will treat the woman like a criminal. He thinks it's unfair for such an important NPC to be seen as a thief. At this, he remembers the past and how tough his master was with him. She always made him work and carry boxes in the shop without a break. The woman also scolded him whenever he got hurt during training. Even though she was demanding, she taught him magic and helped him improve. A sad memory of her trapped behind bars comes back to his mind. In that cold cell, the master told him to hold his head high and not give up. She said it wasn't his fault and that she would get revenge on the scammer. But right after that promise, the prison caught fire and she didn't survive. Back in the present, he arrives at the shop door with a heavy heart. He takes a deep breath before finally entering the establishment. With his hand on the doorknob, he slowly opens the door to enter the place. Upon entering the shop, he calls out the name of his old, dear master. The woman is sitting at the counter with a bored expression on her face. Hearing the voice, she looks up and notices the young man's presence. She turns and asks who this new face is that just arrived. With disdain, the woman asks if he even knows who he's talking to. The young man smiles and says he's a rookie who wants to learn magic from her. Surprised, the master questions if he really wants to learn magic from her. She finds him amusing and asks why she would teach a complete stranger. He was already expecting the refusal, but has a solution to convince her. Noticing something odd, the woman asks him to wait a moment. Then she recognizes him and points at him with a surprised expression. The master identifies him as the famous player called Black Dragon. He tells her that Julio was setting her up, and the woman is shocked. With a smile, she calls him trash and says she was already expecting trouble. Either way, Atsubal thanks the young man for all his great help. Thanks to him, she managed to avoid a very unpleasant situation. The protagonist replies that he also hates that scammer merchant. The two agree that the man has the face of a con artist and laugh together. She remembers their conversation and asks if he was looking for a magic book. But suddenly, the woman stops talking and seems to have an idea in her head. The master then asks if he's actually looking for a cure. Hambit says the book of healing was right in front of her the whole time. With a smile on her face, the woman says she'll help him with his quest. Before they start, she wants to know how much he understands about medicine. Confident, the young man says he knows enough, and she accepts his answer. Then she tests him about a sickness with blue pupils, dizziness, and vomiting. He crosses his arms and admits he doesn't know the name of that specific illness. The woman turns her back and complains that she's been tricked many times before. She remembers all the fake experts who only wanted her money. Her hopes have been crushed countless times by malicious people. The young man asks if potions and healing magic don't work on the patient. With trembling hands, She wants to know if he really knows about the illness. He holds her and says it has no name, but he knows exactly how to cure it. Desperate, the woman begs for help and promises to reward him. With a confident smile, he says he'll get the remedy one way or another. A secret quest appears with epic rewards, and the chat goes wild. His buddy can't believe their luck, and the young man asks what an epic item is. Hambit plays dumb and asks his friend to explain everything again. The blonde explains that rank is the level and class represents the item's rarity. There are various types of rarity, from common and uncommon to legendary and mythic. His friend is shocked by the reward, and Hambit wonders about the book. He remembers that this didn't exist before and wants to know how to find the cure. Determined, he decides he's going to use the skill to see just how good it is. His friend asks what the next step is, but the young man doesn't seem to have an answer. Suddenly, the protagonist feels a sharp pain in his chest and doubles over. Yan-woo rushes over, concerned, and asks what's happening to his buddy. The young man says his mom has arrived and begins to disappear in particles of light. In a flash, the character vanishes from the game, leaving his friend all alone. The blonde stands there, completely confused about what just happened. Meanwhile, the live chat starts making fun of and laughing at the whole situation. Back in the real world, he finds his mother and says he was busy. The woman glares at her son with a not so friendly expression on her face. Angrily, she asks why he locked the door, and the young man apologizes. He makes up an excuse and points to the game equipment on the bed. Hambit says his friend invited him to play after his discharge. She recognizes the game from TV and tells her son not to play for too long. The young man says he'll only play for a little while since his internship starts tomorrow. His mother is surprised to hear that he's actually going to do the internship. Furious, she scolds her son for not telling her anything about it. In a swift motion, the woman raises her hand to slap him, but the young man manages to block the blow and boasts about his great defense. Without a second thought, she hits him in the face with her other hand. She continues the argument, and he thinks his mom is worse than a fight master. Embarrassed, he explains that he needs a job since he's graduating. His mother just glares at him with a look of disapproval on her face. The young man says the company is far away, and he needs to wake up early tomorrow. She realizes her son skipped breakfast and scolds him for it. He tries to apologize, but his mother won't accept any of his excuses. Tired of the argument, the young man runs to his room and throws himself on the bed, relieved. Looking at the clock, he remembers the live stream, but decides he needs to sleep early. Meanwhile, in the game, Yan-woo is completely desperate and shouting. Back in his room, the protagonist sighs and complains about his mom again. The clock on the wall shows it's almost 11 o'clock, and he really needs to rest. His friend is still in the game, trying to handle the chaotic chat. The news of the secret quest has already spread throughout the entire game community. Many players are accusing the post of being fake or a marketing ploy. In an office, a man reads the post and doesn't believe a word of what he sees. His name is Jae-Hakim, and he works for a gold farming company. He thinks it's just another marketing tactic from some random streamer. So he searches for Loper but only finds names of monsters from the game. Jae laughs at the nickname Black Dragon and thinks he's just a spoiled kid. With a look of disdain, he continues to analyze the whole situation. In the end, he decides he's going to check all of this out for himself. Back in the game, Yan-woo is completely stuck, not knowing what to do. He tries to calm the chat, but the comments keep flooding the screen. His friend tries to explain the situation, but the chat continues with the jokes. With a confused look, the blonde still hasn't grasped the scale of the problem. Suddenly, a graph shows a huge spike in the number of viewers. He's startled by the number of people and asks why this is happening. Desperate, the blonde sees the post on the forum and tries to call his friend. Just then, a message from Black Dragon arrives, apologizing for leaving. His buddy makes a funny face, relieved and annoyed by the situation. Right after, another message comes in, saying he's going to give a hint. Yan-woo looks at the screen, intrigued by his partner's proposal. He turns to the chat and says he has a gift from his absent friend. The message says the cure can be found in balm slimes and promises more. The next day, in a bustling city, our hero prepares himself, dressed in a sharp suit. He checks his phone to confirm the address. Determined, he walks towards the building, ready for his first day. The sign on the wall shows the name of the company, where he'll be an intern. With a smile, he enters the office and introduces himself as the new intern. An employee yells about unregistered revisions and looks for someone to blame. Seeing the unfamiliar face, the man gets confused and stops shouting. He complains that HR didn't inform him about the new intern's arrival. His expression shows all his dissatisfaction with the unexpected situation. With no patience, he tells another employee to take care of the newcomer. The man introduces himself as Min, Holy, and offers to help Hambit. Then he tells the rookie to leave his bag and follow him through the office. At that, he asks Hambit to clean the whiteboard in the meeting room. Without complaining, the young man grabs the eraser and starts cleaning the board. A team leader walks in and asks why only the two of them are there. Sipping his coffee, the man looks at the young man and asks who he is. Min Ho explains that he's the new intern, and the leader seems surprised. With a bow, the young man promises to do his best during the internship. The man says he doesn't need to try hard and just needs to obey. After that, he simply tells the young man to leave when he's done. The intern leaves the room with a serious expression on his face. He sees the company's future, but decides to learn as much as he can. After his workday, he decides to return to the world of the game. Back in the game, he apologizes and says that work was hectic. His friend stares at him with a sparkling gaze, and the young man is confused. The blonde asks what's wrong with his look and says he's feeling great. Excited, he shows the screen and says the audience surpassed 5,000. With that, the two prepare to start the quest, and he asks a question. Yun Woo replies that so far, no one has succeeded, and the chat gets excited. Hambit says the people in the chat lack imagination and creativity. Confidently, he tells his friend to follow him towards the main gate. The blonde questions his experience, and he repeats the excuse about fantasy novels. He just thought anything would be possible in a game with so much freedom. Some people in the crowd start discussing the young man. Seeing the crowd, his friend explains that everyone came because of the post. Suddenly, the blonde points out that Vanguard is in the middle of the crowd. A group of strong, well-equipped players walks past them. A woman from the group comments to a colleague about the news spreading. She then turns to the young man and asks if he knows what Vanguard is. A man with a golden sword explains what Vanguard is in the game. Another woman adds that the ranking is based on various factors. Out of 300 million, only 10,000 are ranked, and 500 are from Korea. The blonde asks if they haven't learned magic, and the young man has an answer. At that, his eyes are drawn to a man with a shiny, golden bow. He recognizes the weapon and remembers it was made by a skilled craftsman. His friend asks if they didn't succeed, and he says they're from corporations. These people have full support from companies to beat the game and profit. At that moment, a woman approaches and touches our hero's shoulder. She recognizes him and asks when he's going to show how to clear the quest. A man scolds her for believing a scammer, and they start arguing. Tired of the argument, the young man hits the man to shut him up. He says they're going to the sea, and the blonde is confused by the destination. With a smile, he explains they need a fishing rod for the cure. His friend and the chat are shocked and don't understand the need for the item. A donation comes in, and the comment says that fish prices have gone up. With a smile, he thinks that no one there managed to understand his hint. The blonde asks the reason for the rod, and if the ingredients are in the sea. The protagonist just teases his friend with a very vague and uncertain answer. His friend gets irritated with the joke and threatens to end the live stream right then. With a smile, the young man asks to borrow 10,000 gold to buy a fishing rod. His colleague and the chat are completely speechless at the request for money. Meanwhile, a crowd of onlookers forms around the two friends. From a wall, they observe that more and more players are arriving. Hambit promises to pay his friend back, who still doesn't understand the fishing rod plan. In the distance, they spot an old fisherman sitting alone by the sea with a smile. The protagonist approaches to greet the old man. Without beating around the bush, he makes an offer to buy the old man's fishing rod. The young man knows he can hear well and offers 50,000 gold for the rod. The fisherman remains silent, pretending not to have heard the young man's offer. Finally, the old man responds and rejects the proposal, making a counter-offer. With a smile, Hambit negotiates for 6 and thinks that the fisherman hasn't changed. The old man calls him a scammer, and the two continue to negotiate the final price. Tired of the argument, the fisherman finally gives in and accepts the proposal. The young man celebrates the profit, and the old man tells him to take the rod and get lost. Yanwu comments that his friend has a natural talent for streaming. His buddy explains that he has the talent of a clown, and the young man just ignores him. He suggests they try some role-playing, but the blonde doesn't like the idea. His friend explains that bomb slimes are sensitive and explode with a touch. With that, the image of an exploding character comes to his mind. They also explode even if they're attacked from a long distance. The scene of an explosion from a ranged attack comes back to his memory. The blonde continues, saying they even explode if you just bump into them. An image of him exploding again appears, showing just how fragile they are. And the worst part is, they don't drop any items when they explode. With the rod in hand, the protagonist walks carefully through the forest. Soon, he finds a slime and says its height is just perfect. The young man notices the rod's sensitivity is different and needs to adjust. With the rod ready, he prepares to put his plan into action right now. His friend calls out to the young man and says he noticed some people following them. Yanwu looks at the live stream screen and sees a donation with the same warning for them. Hambit already knew and says the groups have been following them since the city, looking at the forest. He knows it's not just one team, but several groups. So he asks his friend for the settings window to adjust the screen. With a smile, he apologizes to the chat and says he's going to adjust the screen. He darkens the screen and says he's going to deal with the groups following them. Again, he borrows the settings window from his friend. With a mischievous smile, he apologizes to the chat before taking action. He darkens the stream and thinks about how he's going to handle the pursuers. At this, his friend remembers his past with books and his passion for fantasy. But in the army, no one shared his taste. He would read the same book over and over to relieve the boredom of the routine. Until one day, a new recruit joined his unit and changed everything. Curious, he asked the rookie if he knew the novel he was reading. The recruit said he had read it and pointed out an interesting part. Even after reading it dozens of times, he noticed details he had never seen before. With a thoughtful look, his buddy wonders about the young man's identity. He remembers how his friend seemed to have lived in that story. When he saw the game announcement after being discharged, he knew instantly. To him, playing with that guy would be a legendary and unique adventure. Back in the present, the blonde says that now only his screen is on the stream, so he decides to pretend he's focused on the slimes to trick everyone. He asks the chat to follow the channel while his friend deals with the problems. The young man thinks it's frustrating to watch everything from his buddy's perspective. He's also anxious and afraid that other competitors will arrive. With the tension in the air, the competition between the groups won't last long. Hambit plants his feet firmly on the ground, ready to finally put his plan into action. With the rod in hand, he prepares for the most important part of the plan. He knows there's always someone impatient who will jump ahead of the others. With a raised finger, he points to a butterfly flying in the sky. With that, he restores the screen and greets everyone who is watching. With steady hands, he holds the fishing rod with all his strength. In a swift motion, he casts the rod's line with incredible precision. He explains that there's a reason he bought the rod from that fisherman. Its hook is very special and sharp enough not to trigger the slimes. Also, when you press a button on the rod, some barbs come out of the hook. The image shows the barbs expanding and catching the slime's core. With the rod, he can control the explosions and create a trap. The slimes caught in the explosion fall from the sky and don't detonate like the others. On the ground, the creatures seem harmless and don't react to anything. The players who were hiding are shocked by the scene they just witnessed. Without a second thought, the group's leader orders everyone to retreat immediately. But before they can escape, the slimes start falling from the sky. The players scream and run desperately to escape the rain of slimes. One of them is hit directly and can only lament his fate. With a victorious smile, Hambit watches the explosion he himself caused. He says he took care of the stream snipers, and that now he can get back to work. In a quick motion, he casts the fishing rod again into the forest. The chat asks about a different colored slime that appears among the rocks. He casts the hook and manages to snag the golden creature without any problems. Carefully, he reels in the line and successfully captures the slime. He puts it in a bag and celebrates having collected the material. With a smile, he explains that it's a slime that doesn't explode. If a group of slimes is eliminated all at once, some become inert. His friend asks if they can copy the method, but the young man says no. With a wicked smile, he says the controls aren't that easy. At that, a man hidden in the bushes breathes a sigh of relief for having escaped. He lets out a sigh of relief for not getting caught in the explosion. His name is Kim Jae-ha, and he works for a gold farming company. He observes the young man and realizes he's not just any rookie in the game. Dressed in a sharp suit, he thinks Hambit is a big shot with a corporation behind him. He just doesn't understand why someone so strong would join a small streamer. Maybe it's a distraction to take the focus off Vanguard and their plans. With a determined look, he decides to focus on finishing the quest first. Completing the quest alone will ensure he meets his monthly quota. But unfortunately, Kim Jae-ha's plan didn't quite work out in the end. Subal complains about what the young man brought her and doesn't seem happy at all. With a disgusted look, she asks if he brought that as a remedy. His buddy asks if it's that bad, but Hambit remains silent. With a sigh, she says she'll reward him and tells him to leave. The woman turns to leave, but the young man stops her from leaving the shop. He says she doesn't seem as desperate as before and stares her down. Angrily, Subal says he doesn't know anything and scolds him for it. She gets worked up with the young man, who stares at her with a serious expression. In a swift motion, he forces the medicine into the woman's mouth. She swallows the mixture, and the young man watches her with a keen eye. The two friends just watch the scene unfold in front of them. With a disgusted look, his friend realizes her expression is quite honest. Subal asks if he forced her to eat that, and seems very shocked. Soon after, she starts to feel sick and runs to the back of the shop. Hambit says the effect is immediate, and his friend realizes she's vomiting. A loud noise echoes from the back of the shop, and she comes out furious with him. She grabs him and shouts, asking what he did to her just then. Angrily, the woman calls him a freak and asks about a seed. He explains that the seed is the cause of the illness her mother has. Hambit says the remedy works like a charm, and his friend notices something. He realizes the woman is vomiting and is shocked by the situation. From the back of the shop, a loud noise echoes again, surprising the two of them. She grabs him by the collar and furiously asks what he did to her mother. With a smile, he explains that was what was making her sick all along. The woman is shocked, and he says the vomit was the root of the problem for both of them. He reveals that he noticed her illness the moment he saw her in the shop. The young woman was suffering in silence, so as not to worry her dear mother. She was also afraid that opportunists like Julio would use it against her. Subal asks how he knew, and the young man understands her reasons. He then explains that she swallowed a parasitic seed that grows in the stomach. The parasite came from ingredients from the south, and only slime mucus can remove it. That's why they needed an inert slime that no longer had explosives. Without the explosive properties, the mucus only leaves a toxin for vomiting. As soon as the seed is expelled, the cure is instant because it wasn't an illness. The woman understands she just needs to vomit to get rid of the problem for good. Hambit hands her the plate and says she won't need any more medicine. With a gentle look, he asks the young woman to go check on her mother now. Holding the plate, he reflects on Subal, even though she's in a game. Our hero thinks to himself that she hasn't changed at all. He remembers the past and how she took care of him when he was injured. Even though her words were harsh, the master was always by his side. With a sincere smile, he wishes for his old master to find happiness. At that moment, a blue screen appears and a cutscene starts to play. In the scene, the woman brings the medicine to her mother, who is sick in bed. Carefully, she takes a spoonful of the mixture to give to her mother. With her daughter's help, the old woman manages to take some of the medicine. The woman watches her mother with an expression of pure worry on her face. Her eyes widen as she waits to see the medicine's effect. She comes running back and says her mother vomited seeds and complains about the doctors. With a dark smile, she vows to get revenge on all those frauds. Hambit smiles, as it's been a long time since he's seen his master smile like that. Crying with happiness, the woman thanks him for everything, and the chat goes wild. She says the two of them saved her life and her mother's, and the young man feels embarrassed. As a reward, she says it's only fair to give a special gift to both of them. With that, the woman places the spell book he wanted so much on the table. The protagonist says thanks, but the young woman says she's the one who should be thankful. His friend goes crazy and asks to touch the book, but Hammett says it's his. Before they leave, the woman says she still has more rewards to give. With a smile, she hands a huge, heavy bag to the two friends. The blonde is surprised and thinks she's giving more than usual. Confused, the young man sees a system notification about the first-time reward. With this, the gold reward is doubled from 2,000 to 4,000. The status points also increase from 3 to 5 with a bonus of 2. On top of that, he gains 200 experience points for completing the quest. With the experience gained, his level increases by 5, with 5 more status points. Suddenly, the spellbook glows, and its grade is upgraded to unique. With a wicked smile, he holds the glowing book, not understanding a thing. The book continues to shine brightly in his hands, leaving him shocked. His friend is speechless and remembers the phrase, "first-time reward," from the system. At that moment, the chat explodes with questions, and his buddy doesn't know what to do. The young man remembers something and starts laughing at the whole crazy situation. The blonde is shocked by the unique reward for completing the quest first. Yan Wu asks his friend to say something to the viewers on the live stream. Desperately, he tries to calm the chat, but no one believes what happened. He can't read anything because the chat is moving too fast and the mood is tense. The woman calls the young man again and says she has one more thing to give. The protagonist is surprised, as he didn't expect to receive even more gifts. A new achievement is unlocked for being the first to rescue Atsubal. He receives a letter of introduction and an extra bonus status point. She explains that the letter is for the blacksmith in case he needs a new weapon. The young woman says their equipment is ruined because of the slimes. With a disgusted look, she complains about the rotten smell coming from the two players. With a smile, she thanks them once more and says they can come back if they need anything. With a smile, the young man agrees with the woman and thanks her for all the help. Once outside, his friend asks what they'll do now with the reward. His colleague explains that it's an open-world game and they can go wherever they want, but he warns him to be careful and not to enter areas with too high a level. The blonde asks why he didn't change his appearance, and the young man plays it cool. His friend says he spent 5 hours creating his character and seems proud. He also explains that you can choose your gender and not everything is as it seems. Tired of the conversation, the protagonist thinks he needs to decide on his next destination. With a determined look, he seems to have an idea of what to do next. Suddenly, a 50,000 won donation appears on the stream screen. The streamer shouts with happiness and thanks the donor for the large contribution. At that, our hero realizes his share is 25,000 and gets excited. Right after, another 10,000 won donation appears on the stream for the blonde. Then another for 30,000 comes in, praising the unique reward he won. At that moment, a 100,000 won donation explodes on the screen, surprising everyone. His friend thanks them euphorically, his eyes shining with money signs. Excited, He shows his colleague that the audience has reached 8,000 people. The chat complains because the channel was small but has now blown up in viewership. The protagonist reflects that a single quest brought in 8,000 viewers. The chat asks for a reaction, and his friend says he'll do something special for them. The young man calculates that his share of the donations is 250,000 won. With that, his partner starts doing a very strange thank you dance. Looking at his hand, he thinks he can make a lot of money if he keeps this up. With a clenched fist, he says he can finally pay for everything for his mother. He remembers the deity showing him that in the real world, he was missing. In that vision, his mother had given up everything to find him. Back in the game, his friend tells him to use the book because everyone is waiting. With the item in hand, he touches the red gem to activate the new magic. The book glows, and the system begins to register the young man's new skill. A window appears and reveals the fire magic fireball of unique grade. The young man thinks it's like cheating and remembers the hardships of the past. His friend asks if he felt the power, but the protagonist denies everything. With that, the two are completely confused by the system's reaction. So he plays it off and says he felt a delay because it's a unique skill, but in his mind, he wonders why that happened to him. He understands that the game reflects what he learned in the other world. His partner hurries him and tells him to use the magic for the viewers. The blonde points to a large rock and suggests he use it as a target. With that, the young man concentrates and focuses all his attention on his hand. He takes a deep breath and prepares to finally use his new skill. At that, flames engulf his hand, and he shouts the name of the spell with force. In a swift motion, he launches the fireball towards the large rock. The attack travels through the air with impressive force and speed. Upon hitting the target, a giant explosion destroys everything around it. The two friends watch the dust settle after the massive fire explosion. With a victorious smile, the young man crosses his arms, very proud of the result. He thinks that level 1 magic is much stronger than he imagined. Suddenly, he feels something strange, and his eyes widen in surprise. A new title is unlocked, throwing him into a dark, starry space. Scared, he looks around, not understanding what's happening to him. A giant hand appears out of nowhere and tries to grab him with great force. Exhausted, he kneels on the ground, breathless after the bizarre experience. The card explains that the title increases proficiency and unlocks the spirit. With a wicked smile, he seems to understand what just happened there. Angrily, he clenches his fist and curses the goddess for yet another surprise. Hamlet confirms the rules of the test with the blacksmith to create his new special weapon. His friend suggests he put his status points into agility, but the guy says he doesn't need to. Confidently, he grabs an arrow to prepare for the first shot at the target. He aims the bow and arrow, showing his full concentration for the challenge. A notification pops up, revealing that his skill proficiency is rising very quickly. With his face twisted in pain, he realizes this skill comes at a great cost. The pain is so intense that he grabs his leg and blames the goddess for yet another one of her tricks. Tired and breaking out in a cold sweat, he lets out a sigh, and a small light escapes his mouth. Desperate, he puts his hand on his head and understands that the goddess was watching him. Furious with the whole situation, he throws the arrow forcefully onto the ground. The arrow hits the target, and his friend yells that he should have put points into agility. The guy says it's fine, and that he's already got the hang of it, while the chat trolls him. His colleague loses his patience and tells him to do whatever he wants with the challenge. At that, his friend flips out and says he won't give him any more tips on missions. Suddenly, a donation of over 7,001 comes in to calm the mage down. The two are completely shocked by the amount of the donation that appeared on the screen. His friend changes his tune and says he was just kidding for the live stream. With a smile, he realizes the money calmed him down and wonders if he's always been this way. Looking at the letter of recommendation, he wonders what their next step will be. With a mysterious smile, the guy says he already has a place in mind for them to go. The new title increases his power and unlocks the spirit, leaving the guy confused. Seeing that he doesn't want to follow the story, His friend questions him, but he just says he hasn't been here in a long time. The protagonist replies that he'll do that later because he needs to get new skills first. With his goal in mind, our hero approaches a wooden door and opens it. Inside, they find a rustic place that looks like an experienced hunter's cabin. The wall is filled with hunting trophies like deer heads and other animals' skulls. At this, his blonde friend gets scared and comments that the place is pretty creepy. A muscular man appears with a large blade and asks if they're customers and which one is the hunter, Ligner. With a smile, the guy says he came to learn archery from him, and his partner is startled. The hunter throws a piece of meat on the table and stares him down with a serious look on his face. His friend complains that this is unfair because he also wanted to be a powerful mage. Our hero remembers that proficiency is more important than the magic's grade. He then tells his colleague that he has the wrong idea about using magic. Hambit explains that magic isn't just about clicking, and that the problem is much deeper. With an air of wisdom, he states that magic is mathematics and requires many calculations. In his mind, he remembers an impossible feat with level 2 equipment. Meanwhile, in another part of the game, we see a city with stone buildings. A few gold coins are tossed into the air by someone who looks bored. A woman catches the coins and complains that there's nothing fun to do. She complains that only weaklings show up, and it's making her frustrated with the game. At that moment, the young woman hears a noise and turns her head to see what it is. In the distance, she sees two silhouettes entering the city through the main gates. Curious, the woman wonders what kind of fools have come looking for trouble with her. Confused, his friend complains that he's not going to use a unique magic as his main one. The protagonist simply ignores his friend's question and cuts him off right away. Yaon Wu asks if he didn't just create his character yesterday and gets very suspicious. The Chad is unforgiving and starts making fun of the guy for not wanting to use his unique magic. Angrily, our hero addresses the viewers, and his friend gets scared. Tired of the jokes, he grabs his colleague and yells about what they know about magic. Back to the hunter, he asks if the guy has the courage to be his apprentice. With a confident smile, the guy replies that he has courage and skill to spare. So, the hunter says the test is simple, and a quest to learn archery appears. Worried about his friend, the blonde guy asks if he's okay, and the guy reassures him. Our hero thinks that there's no point in telling the truth, because no one would believe him. He says it was because of the magic, and asks his colleague to show him a normal spell. The blonde guy gets embarrassed, but his friend insists, saying he's very curious. Reluctantly, his partner agrees to the request and just asks him not to laugh at anything. With a doubtful look, his friend concentrates to prepare his great magic. At that, a lone arrow hits the wooden target, far from the center. The blonde guy is shocked by the result and can't believe what he just saw. Looking at the target from a distance, he realizes just how weak his magic arrow was. With the bow in his hand, the protagonist prepares to show his true strength. His arrows hit the target with precision, and he racks up points quickly. Then, the remaining 26 arrows fly toward the same spot. In the blink of an eye, all the arrows hit the target with brutal force. The impact is so strong that the wooden target is completely destroyed. Every arrow was a perfect 10-point hit, and he completes the mission. With a clenched fist, his hand glows, indicating he passed the master's test. Then his friend yells, "Fireball," and gets ready to show his magic again. He creates a small flame on his fingertip and shows it to the protagonist. Embarrassed, the blonde guy says the magic is small and he'd rather be made fun of. He celebrates the new book, but complains that leveling up magic is very difficult in the game. Meanwhile, in another city, we see a scene with old stone buildings. A few gold coins are tossed into the air by someone who looks bored. A woman catches the coins and complains that there's nothing fun to do. She complains that only weaklings show up, and it's making her frustrated with the game. At that moment, the young woman hears a noise and turns her head to see what it is. In the distance, she sees two silhouettes entering the city through the main gates. Curious, The woman wonders what kind of fools have come looking for trouble with her. With their prizes in hand, the protagonist and his friend walk along, satisfied. Our hero just stares at his friend with a bored expression on his face. His colleague is jumping for joy, and the guy asks if he isn't a little too excited. The blonde guy compliments his partner's aim and asks if he had practiced before. With his eyes shining, he yells that they're both going to get rich this way. He explains that he bet on his friend's victory and turned the tables against everyone. The blonde guy says it would be cool to shake things up like this every once in a while. Excited about their success, the friend asks what their next destination will be. Hammett replies that he's going to learn swordsmanship and get the quickness skill. His colleague is confused, and the guy explains that the skill is essential for swordsmen. The blonde guy says that it's a useless skill, but Hammett just tells him to follow, not understanding a thing. His colleague just calls for them to go together already. The guy points to the NPC Raya and says she's the reason for the skill's bad reputation. The difficulty of her mission is too high for the reward the skill offers. His friend doubts he can complete the mission, but the guy remains silent. Without saying a word, he just starts walking toward the woman in front of him. The young woman notices him approaching and looks at him with a smile. He says he came to learn the best skill she can teach him. With a smile, the woman replies that the guy's spirit isn't half bad. Then she throws a bag of money on the ground in front of our hero. The bag of coins shines on the ground, while the guy just watches the scene. Suddenly, the woman starts running and says she's getting very curious. With the bag on her back, she turns around and faces him with a challenging look. She says the fee is a gift, and 5,000 gold is a pretty cheap price. The woman finds his lack of reaction strange, and he asks her to just teach him the skill already. In his mind, he remembers the 55 regressions and the gold she took. With a look of contempt, the woman stares at the protagonist who is challenging her. She says she doesn't like him and gets ready to start the real test. In a swift move, she flees and yells that the lesson has begun and he must catch her. The mission is to find the woman who ran away to get the quickness skill book. Our hero knows the mission takes 15 hours and 25,000 gold. Furthermore, he explains that the timer stops if you log out or do other missions. With a smile, he says he's going to call someone for help, and his friend is astonished. With that, he goes to a woman's shop who asks if he wants to find Raya. The young woman is happy to see him and wants to know how he found out they are sisters. With a fake smile, he makes up the excuse that it's a pretty famous rumor. Tired of the conversation, the woman just agrees to help him with his mission. His friend is confused by the story, and the protagonist makes up another lie. He gives him a lecture and says that his colleague needs to observe things more. With a wicked look, he blames him for sending Atsubal to be locked up without thinking. Impatiently, the woman calls for him so they can go look for her younger sister. Meanwhile, the girl is sitting on a rooftop, very relaxed and singing. She pets a cat and thinks that now she is completely safe. With a smile, the young woman believes they must have already given up looking for her. Confidently, she boasts about her perfect hiding spot, but hears someone call her name. Suddenly, her sister appears, and the girl is startled by the unexpected surprise. Shocked by the scene, the young woman can't believe what's happening. With her eyes wide in astonishment, she is left completely speechless. She accuses him of cheating, and he says he used the necessary means, just as she said. The older sister asks to talk, and the girl becomes afraid of what's to come. In an instant, the woman starts scolding her sister for taking from people. She reprimands her for only learning her lesson when caught by a trickster like Julio. Tired of the fight, she tells the girl to go to the shop when she's finished with everything. With a smile, the guy thanks Atsubal while the younger sister apologizes. The woman hands over the book and says he's the first player like that. Though reluctant, the girl hands over the reward because a promise is a promise. The mission is completed, and he gets another unique skill book in the game. With a smile, he watches the girl leap away and bid farewell forever. His friend arrives out of breath and asks if the mission is over, and he confirms it. With the book in his hand, He shows off the unique reward, and his colleague is shocked. With a smile on his face, he says they can now learn to fight with swords. His friend arrives out of breath and asks if the mission is over, and he confirms it. With the book in his hand, he shows off the unique reward, and his colleague is shocked. With a smile on his face, he says they can now learn to fight with swords. The book glows in his hands, and the skill is transferred to his body. He finds it strange that the book is a consumable item but doesn't care. His colleague asks why he learned quickness, and the guy says it's obvious. He explains that in a race with the same speed, the skill would make the difference. With quickness, he could run a little faster and win the contest. His friend laughs and says the difference is minimal, but he's thinking about the game's future. The blonde guy brags about his sword, and the chat makes fun of his swordsman level. The protagonist points to the chat, and his friend gets irritated by the jokes. He realizes that most players follow the same progression path. The guy concludes that this is because of the game's beginner guide. He understands that no one did Atsubal's mission because of Julio's setup. Without his help, the woman would be taken away, and Ria would be a very hard NPC to find. The fact that he was the first to complete the missions has a special meaning. He realizes that his past experiences are clues to the right path. Determined, our hero decides he will beat the game his own way. The guy doesn't know what the goddess is planning, but he is sure of one thing. He refuses to be a puppet and will forge his own path in the game. The two friends walk through a forest in search of their new master. His colleague complains about the distance, but the protagonist says it's the NPC's concept. With a smile, he points to a gazebo and says they've finally arrived. Excited, they shout that they came to learn how to fight with swords from the master. The man in the hat turns around slowly with a cup of sake in his hand. With a serious look, he stares at the two players watching him from a distance. His friend says the master is as intimidating as before and gets scared. The sword master's name is Balder, and he seems very serious and reserved. He tells the guy to swing the wooden sword nonstop until he says to stop. The protagonist is instructed to use the sword that's right behind him. The master says that words are not necessary since he came to learn the sword. With a quick motion, the master throws a wooden sword on the ground for him. The guy starts swinging the sword while the master just watches him from a distance. His friend explains that the mission has 2 stages, and the chat comments on the time. He remembers a clip where a player had a bad time when facing Master Balder. In the video, the master was menacing the player with the wooden sword without mercy. His colleague gets scared, and the chat starts placing bets on our hero's time. The donations start pouring in, and the bets get higher and higher on the stream. With the prize at 800,000, his friend shouts and wishes his partner good luck. With the wooden sword in hand, the guy prepares to begin his test. He closes his eyes and concentrates, fully to feel the weight of the weapon in his hands. He thinks that what's important isn't the time, or the count of the swings in the mission. The master doesn't expect much from beginners, because he knows they are inexperienced. Most players think using a sword is the easiest thing in the game. For Master Balder, seeing players with that mentality is a great insult. What the master really wants is a sincere and respectful attitude toward the sword. With a determined look, he prepares to show his true dedication. The master notices the change in the guy's posture and watches him more closely. Instead of swinging the sword, he just raises his hand and shows it to the master. The master says that's enough, and the chat is left completely confused by the scene. With a smile on his face, our hero sees the mission screen, and his plan worked. A new mission appears, and now the objective is to defeat Master Balder in a duel. His friend is shocked by the speed and points out that the second stage has already begun. He wonders if the mission is already completed, and the chat complains about the result. A donation changes the bet, and now he needs to block 2 hits to win. The guy questions the bet, and his friend stares at him with an astonished expression. Another donation raises the bet to 4 blocks, and the pressure just keeps mounting. He thinks about the challenge and knows the difficulty will be adjusted to his proficiency. His friend freaks out when he reads that he'll have to go bungee jumping if they fail. With a smile, he just gives his friend a pat on the shoulder to calm him down. His friend is startled by his look and asks the reason for that weird face. With a smile, he tells his colleague not to worry because he's not going to jump. The protagonist just asks his partner to trust him one more time in the game. But the blonde guy remains suspicious and asks why he has that look on his face. With his hand on his friend's shoulder, he tries to offer some reassurance. Suddenly, a 1,000,001 donation comes in, praising their friendship. Shocked, the guy realizes the total prize is now 1,800,000. Back to the duel. The master stares at our hero with a serious expression. With a firm grip, he holds the wooden sword and prepares for the duel. Master Balder also prepares to attack and unsheathes his sword. With the sword in hand, the protagonist assumes his combat stance on the spot. In the blink of an eye, the master charges forward with impressive speed. The impact of his landing on the ground kicks up a large cloud of dust. With a quick spin, he attacks with a blue aura that cuts through everything in its path. Our hero braces for the blow and says the duel has finally begun. The master's attack tears through the ground and goes straight for the protagonist. In a leap, the swordsman comes down with a powerful strike to end the duel. His friend and the chat are shocked by the ferocity of Master Balder's attack. With his teeth clenched, he feels the full pressure of the blow in his arms. With great effort, the guy manages to block the master's first attack. Impressed, his friend yells that he managed to withstand the swordsman's strike. With a sigh, the master seems to acknowledge the strength of his opponent in the duel. Surrounded by a blue aura, the master prepares for his next swift attack. The protagonist raises his arms to defend against the incoming blow. The two wooden swords are about to clash forcefully once again. The two test their strength, but the master seems to have the advantage in the clash. He realizes his movements are slow because of the game's synchronization. With the force of the blow, our hero's wooden sword breaks in half. Using his quickness, he is grateful for learning the skill and dodges the master. The tip of the broken sword is stuck in the ground, signaling the end of the second block. The master glares at him and says he seems to have a lot on his mind right now. Then he asks if the guy is showing off or if he was caught by surprise. With a smile, our hero taunts him, and the chat goes wild with his boldness. The master replies that he got it all wrong, and his gaze becomes more serious. Saying he'll end this quickly, the swordsman lunges forward with a swift strike, but the guy dodges and yells that they'll only know the outcome at the end of the fight. In a quick move, he manages to block the sword master's attack. With the impact of the defense, he ends up shouting for his friend who is watching everything. His colleague is shocked by the master's strength and the mission's difficulty. Relieved, he celebrates that his partner managed to dodge the blow in the nick of time. The master towers over the guy, and the chat praises his movements in the game. The swordsman thinks his opponent must be getting anxious about the fight. He believes the young man is holding on for longer than he should be in the battle. Therefore, the master decides to attack with even more force to end the duel. From below, our hero manages to stop the blow with his sword. The sword master is completely surprised by the unexpected defense. With a smile, he points out that the master's movements have gotten bigger. Seizing the opening, he uses his opponent's force to unbalance him. The master's sword glows with blue energy as he prepares another attack. With a bead of sweat on his face, the guy admits that blow was very dangerous. With a strong step, the master advances for his final all-out attack. Surrounded by a dark aura, he unleashes all his power at once. Our hero concentrates and prepares his defense for the last block. The two wooden swords cross with absurd force and impact. The clash of the blows creates a huge explosion of energy on the battlefield. The guy's sword shatters, but he manages to hold the hilt firmly. With great effort and determination, he withstands the pressure of the final blow. The sword master's eyes widen, unable to believe what he's seeing. He stands still for a moment, processing the guy's incredible defense. Fallen on the ground, our hero celebrates because he managed to defend 4 times. With a smile, he celebrates the mission's success, but the chat is still confused. Lying on the ground exhausted, he He says that was a very tiring battle. A notification confirms the end of the duel, and he feels good about the victory. His friend asks about the reward, and he says he'll calculate everything later. His colleague is suspicious of the promise, but our hero assures him he'll pay him. He remembers that they met in the army and approaches his friend. With his hand on his colleague's shoulder, he looks at him with a serious expression. Curious, his friend asks what he did before joining the army. The guy gives a vague answer, and the chat starts creating theories about his past. The blonde guy asks if all the mission money is really going to Black Dragon. Hammett doesn't understand, but his colleague says he did everything with his own strength, with a smile. He says he's happy he doesn't have to go bungee jumping. The chat teases him, and our hero wonders if he would really do it. A new donation of 100,000 won arrives, and the donor asks him to use the sword more. With a sigh, he thanks them for the donation and promises he'll use the weapon more. In the distance, Master Balder is leaning against a tree with his arms crossed. The protagonist notices that the swordsman seems to be furious with the result. He concludes that the master is blaming himself for being read by a novice. With his head down, the guy understands the great sword master's frustration. The master approaches and asks if the duel between them is finally over. In a firm voice, he tells the guy to wait there and turns to leave. The protagonist senses the master's anger and knows that whoever comes next will have problems. Suddenly, the master returns and hands him a skill book as a reward. With the book in hand, he thinks that he now has 4 different skills. The mission is completed, and the rewards are maximized by the evaluation. Another donation arrives, and the chat explodes with requests for private lessons. His friend is confused by the reactions, but he says he still has work to do. Excited, his colleague offers to give lessons, and the chat tells him to get lost right away. Approaching the master, our hero says their conversation isn't over yet. With a serious look, he faces the swordsman and asks if there's anything else. The swordsman remains silent for a moment and just stares at the guy. With a clenched fist, he says he heard his master move to Edlin. At that, he takes out a handkerchief and tells the guy to show it to his former master. The man guarantees that with the handkerchief, his superior will at least listen to what he has to say. The cloth has a design of a green sword, and he gives a clue about the whereabouts. With the item in hand, our hero repeats the phrase about where the winds meet. Then he calls his friend and says they need to go back to the city now. A donation comes in, and the chat comments on Balder's workload. With a blue sky and a few clouds, the scene changes back to the city. His friend asks if their next destination is Balder's master, and the chat gets excited. But the protagonist says that's enough for today, and his colleague is shocked. He explains that he has to work tomorrow, and says goodbye, so he can sleep. The guy confirms to log out, and his friend asks if he'll be back tomorrow. In a flash of light, our hero finally leaves the game world. Back in the real world, he takes off the equipment and complains about the heat he felt. Sweaty, he decides to take a shower and wonders if he pushed himself too hard. At that moment, his cell phone starts vibrating on the bed, catching his attention. A message from his friend informs him that the payment for the work has been made. Soon after, a notification from the bank shows a deposit of 3 million won. He stares at the screen, shocked by the amount of money he just received. With wide eyes, he can't believe the amount of the deposit. His hands tremble as he holds the phone, and he wonders about the donations. Thinking about his playtime, he considers that he might not need to work for a living anymore. He remembers how he wanted to return to reality, and now he thinks about going back. The guy decides to keep the stream as a hobby, and the chat doesn't like the idea. His friend sends a message and asks if he's going to continue with the live streams. With his head spinning, he thinks there's no guarantee of donations like those. He decides that getting a job will make his mom more relaxed and happy. With a smile, he reflects that it would be good to take better care of his mom from time to time. Suddenly, he hears his mom furiously yell his full name. Waking up startled, he complains that his mom called him so early in the morning. Angrily, she shows him her phone and asks where all that money came from. Confused, He looks at the screen and sees the deposit notification. With the phone in her hand, the woman shows the bank message to her son. She scolds him for staying up all night and gives him a light smack on the head. The guy says he earned the money legitimately, and she questions its origin. Suspicious. The woman can only think that he got involved with gambling. He explains that his friend invited him to play a game and gave him a gift for it. Together, they did a stream and earned a little money from donations. The guy assures his mom that he would never do anything illegal in his life. Tired, she says they'll talk later and tells him to get ready for work. He tries to get her attention, but the woman simply ignores him and leaves the room. She says it's not that she doesn't believe him, but she's worried about the guy. With a sigh of relief, he realizes he managed to convince his mom. With a determined look, he says he will do his best not to worry her. He promises that she won't have to carry the weight of the debt alone anymore. With his hand on the door, he swears he will work hard to give her a better life. Thinking about his past, he reflects that reality isn't so harsh after all. But when he gets to work, a colleague complains that he's daydreaming. A boss tells him to focus and complains about getting told off first thing in the morning. Another colleague hands him a document and says the content is difficult but organized. With the papers in hand, he starts to read and realizes he can understand everything. But before he can start working, the team leader calls him over for a talk. The man calls him a trial version and bothers him with non-work-related matters. He throws a card on the table and tells him to go buy coffee for everyone. Confused, the intern asks what kind of coffee he should buy for the team. With a click of his tongue, the boss glares at him with a look of contempt. He says everyone drinks iced Americano and that Minho should have told him. The guy apologizes and says he forgot, but the boss doesn't seem convinced. He realizes the leader wants to use him to bother the other employee. In the hallway, he feels heavy, as if carrying a large shadow on his back. When he returns, he sees the team leader yelling at Minho about his work. His colleague just listens to the scolding with an empty look, as if he's used to it. With his head down, he slowly opens his mouth to defend himself from the boss. The guy says it won't be possible with his current workload at the company. With a document in hand, the boss reprimands him for choosing what he will do. He throws the papers on the floor and tells the employee to do as he was told. At that moment, our hero arrives with the coffees and interrupts the argument. The two bend down to pick up the papers, and the atmosphere in the office becomes very tense. With a cup in his hand, the leader glares at the guy, angry at his interference. With a look of contempt, the boss insults them both before walking away. Back at his desk, his colleague seems thoughtful and looks very downcast. Reflected in the monitor, his eyes seem even more empty and tired than before. With a sigh, he apologizes to Hambit for having him witness that scene. Our hero tries to calm him down, but his colleague says that's not the only reason. The guy explains that the new project is on the development side of the company. Therefore, he won't have time to look after the intern like before in the office. He asks if the project is related to the game, and his colleague is surprised. The employee confirms it and says they need to play for a long time. With a smile, our hero offers to help with the new project. With a pink sky and a few clouds, the scene changes to the end of the workday. In a suit and with a bag over his shoulder, he leaves the office to go home. Suddenly, he hears someone call him and turns to see who it is. Confused, he looks at the person who called him and doesn't recognize them at first. A guy in a hoodie asks if work was good and greets him excitedly. Our hero blinks and realizes it's his friend from the game, Yan Wu. His colleague asks how he's doing, and he says he slept for 3 hours. The two go into a coffee shop to talk about work and the game. With his head back, he complains about how tiring work and his routine are. His friend asks if it's that bad, and he says he could do a whole stream just complaining. Lying on the table, he asks what his friend wanted to talk to him so badly about. With a phone in his hand, his colleague shows him something with a very excited smile. He shows several messages from companies that contacted them after the stream. A gaming corporation even offered a starting salary of 100 million won. The guy says everyone is desperate for him and asks about his choices. The protagonist gets a serious look on his face, and his friend asks what happened. With his hands on the table, he asks his colleague to tell him the whole truth. The guy says it's obvious when he's lying and looks at him seriously. With a scary look, he asks if his friend really wants to join a company. His colleague gets scared and tries to explain, but our hero already knows everything. With his hands on his friend's head, he tells him not to hide his feelings. Outside the coffee shop, a cry of pain echoes through the street, startling everyone. With his head aching, the guy complains that his friend is very mean to him. Hambit says he knows about his struggles and that the offer is very good. He appreciates the thought but reminds him that his friend was the one who invited him to play. His colleague falls silent and seems to think about his gaming partner's words. He admits the game is popular, but that it doesn't really match his playstyle. The freedom and adventure were harder than he imagined at first. Our hero turns and faces his friend with a very determined expression. He praises him and says he's the person who shines the brightest in that game. All the exciting moments happened while they were playing together in the game. That's why he wants to be the only one to watch everything up close and by his side. The guy says he wants to share these moments with everyone watching them. His idea is to create a content creator company focused on his friend. He wants to be the one who watches from up close and helps create the new adventures. His colleague says he wants to share all the moments with the viewers. That's why he proposes creating a company to manage his friend's streams. His plan is to create something that combines reality and the game in one place. He remembers a conversation they had in the army, and the guy smiles. Hambit doesn't understand but wants to know how they'll make money from this. His friend explains that the platform now has video uploads, and the profit is higher than expected. With that, he has become the most talked about user, and his videos are featured on the platform. This will cause more people to start playing and want to join them on their adventure. Excited, he suggests they take the stream seriously, but the hero is confused by the idea. The blonde guy says he won't be an employee but a co-CEO to help wherever needed. The guy accepts the offer and thanks his friend, while a waitress serves their order. In his mind, he thinks one of the reasons for playing is because of Yan Wu. But he also knows this is his last chance to reach this airport person. Reflected in the coffee, he wonders if beating the game will answer his existential questions. He wants to understand why he had to go through all that suffering so many times. Suddenly, his friend stares at him with a questioning look, not understanding the situation at all. His colleague is looking at his phone with a surprised expression on his face. He comments that his phone won't stop getting a ton of messages again. With a smile, he says this is the life of a very popular person in the game. At that, his colleague gets startled by something and says he needs to make a call. Desperate, he begs the person on the other end of the line to pick up the call. Our hero gets worried and asks his friend what's going on with him. His colleague then asks if he remembers the group they saw in the city of Edlin. He explains that the group was from a German company called Rashton. It seems the information about Atsubal's mission has been leaked to everyone. His friend says that rumors about a deal between them and the company are spreading. Inside the game, a guy is furious and calls Rashton and Black Dragon scammers. He shouts that you can't trust anyone, and a female player tells him to shut up. The young woman says he should be happy. He at least got a rare item. The guy complains about the reward system, and the girl calls him an idiot for it. Tired of the argument, the young woman threatens to mess him up if he doesn't stop. Now everyone expects Black Dragon to do a live stream to explain the whole situation. Back at the coffee shop, our hero wonders how big the Rashton Corporation is. His colleague explains the Ranger's power is 9,000, and he's a ranker. With a confident smile, the guy thinks there must be a way to solve this. The protagonist asks to start the stream later because he needs to check something first. With a sip of coffee, he seems to be thinking about how he's going to solve this whole problem. Back in his room at night, he prepares to put his plan into action. The guy flips through an old book with notes from his past lives in the game. With great concentration, he searches for a specific piece of information among the pages. A subtle smile appears on his face, indicating he found what he was looking for. With the book in his hands, he finally says he's found the solution to the problem. Barefoot, he steps onto a digital surface and prepares to enter the game. With a blue glow, our hero is transported back to the fantasy world. He arrives at the entrance of a cave and confirms that the location is the same as before. Inside, he finds several bomb slimes and says he needs to be careful not to get blown up. With careful steps, he walks among the green creatures that glow in the dark. With his hand on his sword, he prepares for what's to come inside the cave. He knows there's only one reason for all the slimes to be together there. With a determined look, he finds his true target in the middle of the monsters. A giant level 7 slime appears, and he is the king of all the other slimes. The Slime King has the ability to attract other monsters to absorb them and grow. But the guy notices that the number of slimes is larger than usual and gets suspicious. With a sharp eye, he spots a strange glow coming from the back of the dark cave. He realizes the glowing object is a monster lure intentionally placed there. The lure has the name Rashton engraved on it, and he understands the company's whole plan. The lure is a rare item that can be found in a dungeon in the northern part of the map. The company placed the lure to combine it with the king's ability and create chaos. Now he understands why the slime field was completely empty before. Surrounded by flames, he prepares to launch a fireball at the monster. With a leap, he throws the magic with all his might into the middle of the slimes in the cave. The fireball flies at high speed and hits the Slime King's core dead on. The impact causes a chain reaction, and all the slimes begin to explode. A gigantic explosion occurs and destroys everything that was inside the cave. A notification pops up, and he gains a lot of experience, leveling up 4 times at once. Shocked by the result, he wonders how many slimes were together to give that much XP. Just then, a video posted on the game's community page simply explodes with views. The truth is, our hero recorded everything in the cave and got the proof he needed. Afterward, his friend Yan Wu anonymously published the video for everyone to see, but he didn't include the part where he defeated the slimes, and everyone called out Rashton. With his book in hand, he remembers an NPC he found in the old guide. His name was Zentromber, and he was the miner who found the Slime King's cave. That's why the guy connected the slimes' disappearance with their king's appearance. By confirming the NPC's existence, he easily found the king's location. But the strange thing is, even though the NPC's name was in the guide, there was nothing else. There was no information about the cave, which made him very suspicious. He realizes the guide only reveals things based on the player's own knowledge. The book has a lot of information, but its accuracy is questionable, and some things are just wrong. Because of this, the guy feels like some pieces were purposely removed from it. He then wonders who Adventurer A, the one who wrote it all, really is. Back in the present, his buddy complains that proficiency is the reason everyone hates magic. The blonde guy explains that you have to max out your proficiency to learn new spells. According to him, the process is brutal, which is why most people switch to other classes. With a suspicious look, his friend stares at our hero, who's just observing. He asks how it's possible for his partner to have reached 100% in just one day. Desperate, the blonde guy starts begging for it to be a joke. Hanvit says it was only rank 1, but his friend yells that even that is a nightmare. The friend yells that any spell takes a month and demands proof right then and there. To clear up any doubt, the guy shows his status window with the 4 skills. Completely shocked by what he's seeing, the blonde guy falls to his knees in disbelief. With tears in his eyes, he's convinced it has to be a bug in the game. Awkwardly, our hero says that's just how things happened. He then asks his friend not to mention the proficiency on the stream, and his friend asks why. With a mysterious smile, the guy replies that he wants to show them something more entertaining. The shot focuses on a metal medallion with an engraving of a helmet and a sword. Looking at a group of players, he calls them his lovely villains. In the blink of an eye, a blue light appears, and the live stream finally begins. With that, his friend greets the chat, But everyone is furious about the situation. He asks for calm and denies any connection to Rashton, and the chat starts to come around. His friend promises proof and says the protagonist has something to show them first. At Atsubal's shop, our hero asks if her younger sister has run off again. With a wary sigh, the woman confirms her sister is quite rebellious. The guy tells her to take it easy, since they'll be able to live together again soon. With a small smile, the young woman seems to feel a bit better after his words. She thanks him and says she really hopes things will get better soon. The woman then asks why he's visiting, and he says he wants to learn a new spell. With a smile, she agrees immediately, and the chat is confused by the lack of requirements. Then, the young woman hands the second magic book over to our hero. A new quest pops up, with the reward being a heroic grade spell and lots of points. With the new book in hand, the guide prepares to learn his new magic. Outside, the Rashton members are spying, and he knows they're curious. Without wasting time, he opens the book to absorb all its magical knowledge. Just then, the book glows intensely, and he learns the spell in the blink of an eye. For being the first one to complete the quest, the rewards are upgraded to the unique tier. His friend announces that he got a new unique magic spell, and the chat goes wild. Atsubal gives him a tip to visit the magic laboratory if he runs into any trouble in the future. With that, our hero prepares to leave the shop and continue his journey. He and his friend open the door to see what's waiting for them outside the shop. A crowd is waiting for them, and his friend is startled by Rashton's presence. Among the players is a hooded man who is staring seriously at the duo. The two leave the shop and walk confidently through the crowd of players. The protagonist faces the hooded man and asks if something is wrong. With a smirk, the guy says he hopes everything works out this time. Inside the shop, the Rashton members demand that Atsubal give them the magic book. Meanwhile, outside, our hero remarks that the Rashton guys are relentless. Sitting on the grass, he laughs and tells his friend their greed is unbelievable. His friend questions the plan, and our hero asks what makes them any different from Rashton. In the shop, the guild leader tells everyone to open their books at the same time. As the countdown begins, the protagonist prepares to set his plan in motion. With a confident smile, he turns and tells his friend that the time has come. The two friends brace themselves for the show that's about to unfold before them. On the count of 3, all the players open their magic books at the same time. With anticipation filling the air, they wait to see the result of the quest. With the book in hand, the Rashton leader smiles, victorious with his plan. Suddenly, our hero says, "It's Shotem," with a wicked grin. Without warning, the magic books begin to catch fire, and everyone starts to panic. A player screams in panic as his magic book is completely engulfed in flames. A young woman tries to put out the fire, but the flames seem impossible to extinguish. With her arms crossed, Atsubal watches it all unfold with an expression of pure anger. Outside, everyone is running around in a panic with their magic books in flames. His friend figures out the plan, and the guy says everything in that place will turn to ash. A Rashton player notices that the quest rewards have suddenly changed. Now the reward is a rare grade spell, and the other prizes have all been downgraded. The leader asks how many succeeded and discovers that not a single person completed the quest. With a furious expression, the Rashton leader stands silently, processing his defeat. The hooded man then starts walking angrily toward the two friends. With his arms crossed, the protagonist calmly waits for the player to approach. The man calls him a newbie and asks to have a little chat about what happened. He then asks him to wait a moment, but he seems pretty annoyed by the whole thing. With a smile, our hero asks what he's so eager to talk about. The Rashton player asks him why he was the only one who succeeded. The guy plays dumb and says the veteran players should already know the answer. The man asks if he thinks this is some kind of joke, getting even more furious. He explains that the 50 players who attempted the quest all failed. Because of this, the hooded man accuses him of making the others lose their chance at the skill. With a smirk, the guy says he never said it was a coincidence, which startles his friend. With a look of pure hatred, The hooded man glares at our hero without saying a word. Then, the guy explains that the basic requirement for leveling up is the proficiency of each skill. He then asks the player if they maxed out their proficiency before getting the book. Confused, the man asks what he means by proficiency, and the protagonist says it's common sense. He explains that you need to raise the fireball's proficiency in order to advance. The player shouts that the condition is the same for everyone and accuses him of not doing it either. With an innocent look on his face, our hero says that he actually did complete it. Shocked, the man from Rashton is left speechless, and the chat explodes over the revelation. The guy tells him to check the stream, saying he'll show his stats as proof. He says he doesn't have to hide anymore and calls out the guild for not even checking the live stream. On stream, he displays his unique skills, and the player shouts that it's impossible. The man accuses him of cheating, but our hero says he has nothing to hide. With a smirk, he teases him about his age, and the chat starts making fun of the 30-year-old player. Furious, the man from Rashton grits his teeth and calls him a brat on the live stream. Defeated, he says they'll meet again and tells him to stop manipulating the game. After all the commotion, the shop door opens, and a very annoyed Atsubal appears. She yells at the other players, telling them not to waste their chance to talk to him. But the guy says they can try all they want, because it's not going to work. He remembers that Atsubal wanted dedicated students, not greedy ones. In the past, she taught him that many had met their end by trying to rush things in the game. The woman had warned him not to try learning the next spell without mastering the basics first. But in his past life, he was greedy and ended up getting kicked out of the shop by her. He understands that her personality and principles haven't changed with the system. That's why the more Rashton bothered her, the more her favorability rating dropped. His friend says he was a bit harsh with the player, but our hero questions that. His friend explains that Rashton has many fans, and they might get a lot of hate for this. With a smile, he tells his friend to just hang in there, leaving his buddy confused. He playfully blames his friend, and a donation comes in praising the chaos he caused. Happy with the outcome, his friend gives thanks for the support, and the chat celebrates the reactivation of the field. Our hero says they need to go to the village shop, and his friend asks about Balder. Arriving in the city, they come across a crowd of players in the middle of the square. His friend points to the crowd, and our hero doesn't understand what's going on. With a hand on his friend's shoulder, the blonde guy asks why so many people are gathered there. The protagonist just stares at the scene with a purely curious expression on his face. His friend then points to a woman in a green cloak named Rafina, and the chat recognizes her. With a smile, the red-haired woman faces the crowd, and the chat goes wild. Our hero just watches the scene with a serious and very thoughtful expression. His friend explains that spirit summoners are rare because they have to be chosen, but the guy says the term using spirits is a bit different from what he knows. In his mind, he remembers the first time he managed to communicate with a spirit. Looking at his hand, he seems to be thinking about his past experiences with spirits. With that, he asks his friend just how strong this player named Rafina is. The blonde guy explains that she's a high-rank player, and her specialty is water magic. Her spirit skills are stuck at rank 3, and the title is more of an honorary one. The crowd asks her to show them a spirit, and the woman agrees with a smile. His friend asks if he's also interested in spirits, and the guy confirms it. The woman says that spirits are different from magic, and that birth traits apply. With her hands together, she concentrates, and a blue aura begins to glow around her. Everyone in the crowd is amazed by the beauty of the ranker's magic. The protagonist then concludes that she was someone who benefited from this trait. The woman summons the water and wind spirits she mastered in just 6 months. With the 2 spirits floating by her side, the scene impresses everyone there. In a close-up, we see the details of the 2 very beautiful magical creatures. His friend is amazed, but our hero just comments that the skill is very flashy. Even with all that power, the protagonist wonders how long she's been stuck at rank 3. His friend reveals it's been 10 months because she can't complete the proficiency. Our hero asks if she's the #1 spirit summoner on the server. His friend confirms it but says that top players guard their information very closely. With so many competitors, information becomes a powerful weapon for winning the game. As the woman walks away, our hero thinks that people with spirits feel familiar. With an excited smile, he tells his friend it's time to prepare for the next quest. With a mysterious smile, the guide just replies that he'll see when they get there. After buying a bunch of junk, his friend asks where they are now. With an all-knowing look, our hero simply says that they've arrived. His friend is surprised, and the protagonist confirms that this is the right place. They are on the edge of a cliff, and the guy explains that this is where the winds meet. A new quest appears to find the wind swordsman, and the chat gets scared. Not understanding anything, his friend asks how they're going to get down, and the chat suggests jumping. A donation comes in for a challenge to jump without a rope, and his friend tries to convince him. More money comes in, and the protagonist remains silent with a very strange smile. With a hand on his friend's shoulder, our hero seems to be getting ready for something. His friend begs for it to be a joke, reminding him they can still feel everything in the game. With a pained expression, he says that being thrown off a cliff would definitely hurt a lot. Without a second thought, the guy shoves him off the cliff, and the chat goes wild. The two of them fall at high speed into the abyss, and his friend screams in desperation. The fall seems endless, and the chat starts making jokes about the blonde guy's panic. With a calm face, our hero says they are getting close to their objective. Suddenly, a blue light appears, and he confirms they've finally reached the spot. A giant magic circle appears and cushions the fall of the two adventurers. The protagonist lands with style, but his friend ends up falling flat on his face. His friend complains that he almost passed on, but the guy reassures him, and a donation comes in. With a green handkerchief in his hand, he explains that you can't jump without a ticket. The guy says he'll only reveal the secret after the idiots from Rashton fall a few more times. Inside an ice cave, they spot a person on top of a mountain peak. His friend asks if that's Baldur's master, and the protagonist confirms it. Excited, the friend celebrates that they were the first to discover this place. The guy then suggests that his friend go on ahead to record everything up close. Touched, the blonde guy says his friend is becoming a true game streamer. The protagonist encourages him to go quickly, and his friend agrees to his request. Excited, his friend runs ahead, shouting that this is a world-first discovery, but suddenly, a spear shoots out from the wall and hits his friend right in the face. Shocked by the surprise attack, he almost becomes the first one to be taken out at the location. His friend accuses him of knowing about the trap, and he just says it's no big deal. With a bow in hand, our hero prepares to show off his aim once again. With great concentration, he aims to hit the hidden traps along the path. A few arrows fly, and his friend realizes the path is full of traps. Scared, the blonde guy doesn't know what to say, and the chat tells him to apologize quickly. The arrows fly swiftly down the corridor, disarming all the traps. His friend is startled by the precision of the shots and stands still, unsure of what to do. With that, the protagonist calls for them to get a move on, and the two start running. He explains that he just sensed there were traps and took a preemptive shot. Suddenly, his friend feels a strange vibration and stops running instantly. A giant boulder rolls toward them, and the blonde guy yells for his partner to watch out. Desperate, he yells that there's nowhere to dodge, and our hero looks at him. With a smile, he says there's no need to dodge and readies his fire explosion. The magic destroys the boulder and the path in front of them in a huge explosion. His friend is shocked because he broke the floor and sent the boulder into the abyss. With a wicked smile, he tells the others to keep falling forever. The guy then calls for his friend to keep moving, and his buddy obeys. But suddenly another trap is activated, and spears fall from the cave's ceiling. With his bow, he manages to deflect all the spears with great skill. The projectiles fly at high speed, and he defends himself with absurd reflexes. His friend warns him that they're out of arrows, but he says everything is fine. Calmly, the guy draws his sword and prepares for whatever comes next. He tells his friend to stay aware of his surroundings, and the blonde guy nods. On the stream, he announces that his partner is deflecting arrows with his sword. With swift movements, he dodges all the projectiles, and his friend cheers him on. The floor becomes littered with broken weapons, and he tells everyone they're almost there. Suddenly, the protagonist shouts for his friend to wait and stop walking immediately. In a swift motion, he stops just in time to avoid stepping on a new trap. His friend complains that he almost got taken out, and our hero tells him not to let his guard down. His friend asks how he knew about the trap, and the guy says it was a gut feeling. Suddenly, another giant boulder rolls toward them, and his friend starts to panic. Without a second thought, our hero uses his fire explosion and destroys everything amidst the dust. He says they just need to go a little further to get there. His friend complains about the distance, and the protagonist says they've finally arrived. With a smile, he assures him he's serious and tells his friend to look up. Looking up, they see a person at the top of an ice peak inside the cave. Excited, the blonde guy asks if they can get the new skill, and the guy plays dumb. Suddenly, the mysterious figure tells the two adventurers to leave the area. His friend freaks out and asks if they came all this way for nothing, but our hero just smiles. But the protagonist just sits down on the ground, leaving his friend confused by the situation. At this, the blonde guy gets startled and asks his partner what he's planning to do now. The hero then pulls his colleague over and tells him to sit for a bit because the show is about to start. He whispers that it seems they've passed the tests prepared by the mysterious woman. With that, the two of them sit in silence, watching the figure at the top of the mountain. The woman's name is Asla, and she is extremely cautious with any outsiders. So, the hero remembers that he's tried everything to win her over, but it never worked. He recalls that in his 10th life, he managed to possess her body for a while. Thanks to that, the guy learned about all her traps and attack patterns. And most importantly, he discovered how to gain that woman's friendship. The flask gets close to the lady, and she wonders if it's some kind of drink. She then says she doesn't drink anymore, and the protagonist asks her to roll the flask back. The woman stays silent and ignores his request, leaving the chat completely clueless. She turns around and asks if he didn't understand that she's already made it clear she doesn't drink. But the guy points to some empty bottles hidden nearby, and the chat laughs. With a smile, he asks if she hasn't already had a glass today, leaving her speechless. At that moment, 2 bottles of liquor appear, confirming the guy's suspicions. The hero offers the drink and guarantees she has never tasted a flavor like that before. The woman says a rookie's drink won't satisfy her, but he insists she just try a sip. She then grabs the bottle with magic and warns that she'll kick them out if the drink is bad. Using her powers, the swordsman picks up the flask that was on the ground and analyzes it. Without a second thought, the lady starts drinking the entire liquid all at once. Her eyes widen instantly because the taste was simply incredible. A bluish aura surrounds her as the woman enjoys the special beverage. She doesn't stop drinking, and the chat is surprised by her tolerance for alcohol. His friend asks if that's why he bought random items, and the guy confirms it. The lady finishes the bottle and asks if there's more, completing the first part of the plan. Shortly after she had drunk it all, and the blonde guy is shocked by the scene he just witnessed. With a sigh of satisfaction, she seems to have really liked the mysterious drink. She says it wasn't bad, and the hero is happy that his plan worked out. The curious friend asks how he knew which drinks to mix to create that potion. The protagonist says he used to work at a bar, and that now they can have a conversation. The woman then asks what Balder said about her, and the hero replies that it was nothing much. With a scoff, the lady ties the bottle with a cloth, showing her irritation. Then, she tells them to leave, because there's nothing she can do to help them. But the protagonist interrupts her, saying there is something she can offer that no one else can. Surprised by the response, the swordswoman admits that he is quite perceptive. It turns out she had several disciples, but none managed to manifest her sword. She explains that the talent needed to master her sword is not simple to obtain, creating green energy in her hand. She says that just swinging a blade means nothing. The The hero asks if she's talking about spiritual affinity, and the woman is surprised by the guy. The guy thinks that he learned spirits aren't controlled by talent, but by intimacy, and to communicate with a spirit as quickly as possible, a meeting with Asura was essential. Suddenly, a gust of wind surrounds the two adventurers, leaving the blonde guy quite scared. The woman says she heard through the spirits how they managed to pass her tests. She praises his quick movements, his flexible judgment, and his excellent swordsmanship. But then she says that's all he is and tells the two of them to leave once more. The friend asks if the plan is going to work, and the hero says he knows it won't be easy. At that moment, a system window appears with a secret quest to persuade Asura. The blonde guy freaks out when he sees the secret quest and the incredible rewards, driving the chat wild. Donations start pouring in, and the protagonist thoughtfully stares at the quest log. Out of the 3 quest options, he decides to choose the third one, which is to befriend the spirits. He thinks that what he really wants is to open the path to communion with the spirits. His colleague then asks why he chose option 3, since it seems to be the hardest. The blonde guy gives up on trying to understand, and the hero jokes that he didn't even try to start. A green energy appears near his ear, and the guy says they've finally arrived. With his eyes closed, he is enveloped by spiritual energy and a strong wind. The scene focuses on his concentrated expression as he tries to connect with the spirits. A system window reveals a new effect from his 55 regressions. With a punch in the air and a smile, he celebrates the success of his bold plan. The hero thinks that spirits don't approach humans on a whim, and familiarity is uncertain. He then wonders how the spirits were put into the game, and if communication is the same. With that, he says there's only one way to find out and prepares for the test. At that instant, a notification appears saying that the wind spirit self is curious. Spiritual hands appear and try to touch the adventurer, who extends his hand in response. With a surprised expression, the guy observes the magical creatures approaching him. He thinks that he can't see them, but can clearly feel their touch on his fingers. The guy then focuses on the sensation and prepares for the next step of his plan. Determined, he says he just needs to prove that he has an affinity with the spirits there. The woman says it's not that simple, while the system begins to detect the spirits. The swordswoman is shocked by what she's witnessing and can't believe the scene. A large green magic circle appears in front of him, showing his great spiritual power. He finally says that he understands and that this is the feeling he was looking for. Once again, the spiritual hands approach and try to make contact with the protagonist. The hero then looks up with an expression of recognition upon seeing the creatures. Spiritual energy begins to envelop him, and sparks of light shine on his chest. His friend is in shock watching the scene, and a notification says that Sylph has answered his call. With that, the wind spirit Sylph appears, and the system says she found him amusing. The woman is dumbfounded by the scene, and her eyes widen in pure disbelief. The protagonist greets Sylph, and the system reveals that she is surprised by his affinity. Smiling, the magical creature seems to like him, and the system says she wants to stay by his side. An orb of green energy forms in his hands as the creature floats near him. The energy concentrates and shines brightly in the hero's hands, who smiles at the result. Suddenly, the spirit transforms into a small, cute bird that flies into his hands. A system window shows the new title of Friend of the Spirits with a 20% bonus. The blonde guy thinks the bird is cute, while Asura watches the scene in silence without saying a word. With the bird on his shoulder, he asks Asura if she will teach him how to fight now. With a smile, she says that if that is the spirit's will, she has no other choice. She then summons a book and declares that from that moment on, he is her disciple. With that, a notification confirms that the secret quest has been successfully completed. The system rewards him with gold, a manual, stat points, experience, and even a level. With the book in his hands, he begins to flip through the secret manual he just received. A window pops up asking if he wants to use the item to gain new epic abilities. Without a second thought, the guy confirms his choice, and agrees to learn the new techniques. At that moment, a small puff of smoke happens, startling him and his friend. The ability screen is updated, and the system confirms the new epic level skills. His friend freaks out about the news, and a donation asks them to show off the technique. The blonde guy says thanks and encourages his partner to test out the new power he got right away. With a determined look, he decides to start by testing the wind movement ability. The hero then activates the new skill, and the spirit on his shoulder begins to glow brightly. He feels that his equipment has become lighter, and that this is something on a whole new level. Asking everyone to step back, he prepares to demonstrate the wind swordsmanship. With his sword in hand, the guy concentrates, and an aura of wind and leaves completely envelops him. Focused on the technique, he takes a deep breath to execute the attack with total perfection. He then swings the sword and launches a slash of wind that destroys the rocks ahead. Seeing the destruction, he realizes that this ability is far superior to the others. The pair is shocked by the scene, and the blonde guy shouts that it was a rank 4 technique. His colleague then asks if the ability consumes mana since it's from a spirit. The hero says it's not infinite, but his friend replies that it's still super OP. Asla praises his quick adaptation and says she has one last thing to warn him about. She alerts him about an evil energy in Edlin that could harm the local spirits. The guy thanks her for the warning and says he'll be careful, but his colleague is very confused. In the blink of an eye, Aslo is already on top of the pillar, and a donation asks for tips. The hero teases the chat, saying he still doesn't know what to do with the secret ability. With that, a shower of huge donations begins to appear, begging for information. A famous streamer donates a fortune and asks to have a moment to talk with him. Soon after, a company shows up, offering millions for the information on the ability. More companies donate absurd amounts, and his friend yells that they've become rich. With a satisfied smile, the protagonist decides it's time to leave that place. Far away, 2 players comment that the Rashton guys are still falling off the cliff. The blonde guy thanks everyone for the donations while other players suggest following them to see what they do. At this, the hero finds it absurd that someone would want to find out his real life information. He thinks that he had 2 big reasons for showing the entire process on the stream. The guy says he's going to share the secret information, and a donation comes in at that very moment. Another 200,000 donation appears, and the chat complains about a guy named Avantgarde. The protagonist says that all official matters should be sent to his friend. At this, the blonde guy points to himself, not believing what he just heard from his partner. With a smile, he says they will analyze everything, and that he will post the information on the forum. His colleague gets worried and asks if another guild won't just monopolize everything again, but the hero reassures him and says there's no chance of that happening, while petting Sylph. He then reinforces that any official business should be handled directly with his friend. The blonde guy is surprised again and points to himself with a doubtful look on his face. The guy says they will review all proposals with a very open mind. His partner then asks again if another group won't try to monopolize the information. With a confident smile, he guarantees that it won't happen. No way. The blonde guy says he shouldn't say that with such certainty and remembers the slime incident. The hero says Asla wouldn't let that happen and that the spirits would reject them. His friend is surprised, and the guy explains that spirits hate shortcuts and tricks. He thinks that there are no lies or fraud before the spirits, and that the price is steep. With that settled, the hero says it's time for them to return to the city of Edlin. The scene changes to an office at night, where a man is yelling at one of his employees. The boss angrily asks if the guy is throwing a tantrum just because he pulled an all-nighter. He then questions what's the point of working overtime if the guy doesn't even earn his salary. The employee apologizes again, and the boss yells, asking if he knows about the financial loss. The scene flashes back 4 years in the past, and the guy introduces himself as the new hire, Kim Jae. 2 years later, he joined the game's project team after its launch. His superior tells him to do his best, since he was the one who asked to be there. The team started making a lot of profit, and the work flowed better than anyone expected. One day, he got lost in the snowy mountains and found a unique skill quest. Excited about the discovery, he thinks he hit the jackpot and needs to tell his boss. With a report in hand, he excitedly announces that he found a secret quest. Sitting at his desk, his boss seems very bored and doesn't even pay attention to the guy. But upon hearing that the reward is a unique skill, the man breaks into a greedy smile. Jaya suggests selling the information, since there's no guarantee they'll succeed. The superior says this is the company's chance and asks why the guy is hesitating. He orders everyone to focus on this and already celebrates, dreaming of taking the company public. The employee looks worried, wondering if they can handle the task. In the game, the team is lost in the snow and can't make any progress on the quest. Their luck ran out, and he discovers that other companies also sniffed out the secret quest. With that, several companies entered the race, and they were left behind everyone else. Back at the office, the guy feels defeated because their company was too small. 3 months go by, and a shout of "Enough" echoes throughout the company floor. A director tells them to drop everything because 3 months of digging a dry well is enough. With a not-so-friendly face, the man calls the 3 of them for a talk in his office. The 2 of them are scared because they know they are completely screwed with the boss. The director yells at them, asking if they have any idea how much money they burned for nothing. The boss then shifts the blame to Jaya, and the guy is shocked by the man's betrayal. He says Jaya was overconfident and tells him to shut up without giving him a chance to respond. The superior accuses him of betrayal, and the employee just apologizes with his head down. In his mind, he regrets finding the quest and blames himself for the whole failure. Back in the present, the boss yells in his face, asking if he's deaf or something. The man then asks if he at least managed to talk to that black dragon guy. Jaya says it's difficult, but shows a report with ideas on how to contact players. The superior explodes with anger upon hearing that the idea is to make donations to a streamer. The employee argues that other companies use this method and that it would be an investment. Out of patience, the boss snatches the tablet from the guy's hand with great force. He yells, asking if the guy wants to spend 1 million won on a single donation. The guy holds his tablet tightly, while the boss continues his lecture nonstop. With a furious look, the man asks if he still doesn't understand their situation. He throws the papers on the floor and tells the kid to do some real work, no slacking off. Jaya replies that he understands as the boss opens the door to leave the office. But before leaving, the man calls him a useless idiot and slams the door shut. Alone, the guy grips his tablet and says he'll endure all of this for his family. Back in the game, a huge crowd of players gathers to see the protagonist. His friend suggests seizing the moment and doing the main quest, but the hero hesitates. The blonde guy says it's only 2 in the morning, but the guy complains that he has to work. With a disappointed look, his partner asks if they are really going to call it a day. The hero then proposes allocating his points, and his colleague agrees with a smile on his face. With that, he announces that the Black Dragon's status window will be shown to everyone. The friend freaks out seeing he hasn't distributed a single point, and the chat goes wild. The protagonist says he was just thinking a bit, and a donation appears on the screen. Without wasting time, he taps on the status window to start distributing his points. His colleague asks if he's thought this through upon seeing a point go into the strength stat. The hero then holds his sword and feels has become a little lighter in his hand. He thinks that in the past, he needed decades of training to reach his peak, but now, the guy can get stronger with points and quickly regain his power. With a determined look, he believes he can even surpass who he once was. The scene changes to a training ground, and the protagonist says, "That seems like a good place." His friend is confused, and the screen shows he has distributed 1 point into each attribute. The blonde guy complains that he should focus on agility and that he's wasting points. The guy asks if no one distributes their points, and his friend says to focus on one skill. With a smirk, he states that he put the points exactly in the right place. He explains that he feels a subtle change whenever he increases one of his attributes. The screen shows the stats rising, and he says he needs several of them to use a spirit. The hero says his body changes visibly when the stats go past a certain level. He then demonstrates a much stronger attack after investing a few more points. The window shows that he used up all his points and put 20 into strength, agility, and intelligence. With a focused look, he says the spirit's energy is now gathered to the maximum. The system announces that the strike's range and wind damage have greatly increased. With that, he unleashes a devastating attack that surprises his friend with its power. The training dummy is hit by several strikes, and the chat doesn't understand what happened. His friend is shocked and says that's so broken, as skills like that are usually weak. The hero explains this is the bare minimum for a spirit to like someone, leaving the chat surprised. The colleague then asks the guy to look at his stats, which are at level 25. With a mocking face, the hero asks why his attributes only add up to 45. The blonde guy shouts that this is normal, and the chat agrees, saying his friend is the weird one. The guy jokes that maybe he didn't try hard enough, and the blonde guy falls to the ground. A chart compares the two, and the colleague notices the huge point difference between them. The hero admits that having only 7 vitality is very dangerous, and his friend asks why. The blonde guy explains you can't see the monster's health, and that getting taken out in one hit is normal. With a huge smile, the guy simply tells his friend not to get hit then. His partner gets an irritated look and thinks that if it were anyone else, it would be impossible. The hero announces that his stats are ready and that he's going to log off for today. He then says goodbye to the stream and announces he'll start the main story the next day. The guy lobs out of the game and appears tired in his bed, thinking about taking a shower. The scene then changes to the building where the protagonist lives, under the starry night sky. Entering his apartment, he complains about being tired after the long gaming session. After his shower, the guy sits on the bed to dry his hair with a white towel. At that moment, the guy picks up his phone, which was vibrating on the bed. He sees a message from his friend and is surprised the colleague is still awake. The message says the total donations were over 1 million, and he is astonished. Sitting on the bed, he can't believe the amount and calls his friend a punk with a smile. The hero says to split the money, but the blonde guy refuses, saying it all belongs to him. After the brief argument via chat, the phone is left aside on the bed again. He then lies down, thinking he needs to sleep soon to be able to work tomorrow. With an exhausted expression, the guy closes his eyes, trying to fall asleep quickly. But suddenly, he sits up in bed because he had forgotten something important. The guy remembers he needs to post the promised information and accesses the game's website. Sitting in front of the computer, he thinks it's better to verify his identity first. To do that, the guy looks for the identification code on his immersion gear. With that, the guy sits at the computer and says he'll write the guide so he can finally sleep. But 10 minutes later, he already has a headache because he can't organize his thoughts. He then pushes himself to write the most detailed and factual guide possible for everyone. The scene cuts to the next morning, with the sun rising brightly between the city buildings. Lying in bed, the protagonist grumbles as he's woken up by his phone's ringtone. With his eyes half open, he wonders who would be calling him so early. Upon answering, the guy complains about the deposit, but his friend yells that's not the point right now. The colleague then tells him to check the comments on the post he made on the game's forum. Confused, the hero grabs his phone to see what was happening on the site. He then opens the forum and finds his super detailed post about the quests. In the comments, everyone is complaining about the absurd level of detail in the guide. With a smirk, the protagonist finds everyone's reaction to his post amusing. His partner says that's not a tip, but a thesis, and the hero doubts him. Defeated, the colleague says he'll read it again, and the call between them ends. But the blonde guy calls back, and yells that nobody can follow his tips. It turns out the part about the spirits was even crazier than the first post. The comments call the tips insane, and he thinks he was actually nice in the guide. Stretching, the guy wonders what would happen if someone managed to do it. He knows there are many unknown high-level players on the server. With so many users, more people than he imagines could succeed in the quests. The hero gets out of bed and says, doesn't matter how many people succeed in the end. In fact, he wants several players to succeed to prove the value of his info. But suddenly, a thought worries him, and he wonders what he'll do if no one succeeds. The guy starts getting anxious, thinking he'll look like a scammer to everyone. Desperate, he calls his friend and asks if many people will be able to pass. The colleague calms him down and says it takes weeks for reviews to start showing up. He then advises him to check people's reactions before writing a guide. The guy agrees, and his friend suggests he tries streaming by himself today. The hero thinks it's too soon for that, but his colleague insists he needs to seize the opportunity. The blonde guy explains that the audience will go wild no matter what he does on stream now. The guy thinks that's for the best, but admits he doesn't even know how to start a stream. But his colleague reassures him, saying he's already sent the instructions to the guy. Leaving his house, the hero calls out to his mom, who gets startled and hurries him to work. With a smile, he says he's fine and shows his phone with a notification. His mother screams when she sees a 20 million won deposit in his account. Shocked, she wonders if she's seeing things and is left speechless by the amount. At that moment, the phone shows a video of the stream he did the previous night. Not understanding anything, she asks why on earth someone would give him so much money. The guy explains that he's selling information and asks her not to worry about it. She is impressed by the amounts and wonders if the information is really that valuable. He says he only showed her because she was shocked by 3 million last time. With a shy smile, he thinks that sooner or later, she'll find out everything anyway. He then reveals that he's thinking about taking his game streams seriously. His mother worries about the insults, but the guy says that's just their way. She then agrees, and as she hands back the phone, the woman notices something very strange. The lady notices that the game avatar's face is very similar to her son's face. She says she recognized him right away, and he tries to brush it off, saying it's a coincidence. The mother and son fight over the phone, and the guy complains about the goddess for making them look alike. While getting ready, he says the company doesn't know because they're always working overtime. With that, the protagonist says goodbye to his mother and leaves for another day of work. In the office, we see a guy cleaning and complaining that he only does janitorial work as an intern. Bored, the guy is watching the hero's stream on his phone. Suddenly, he recognizes the protagonist and surprisingly calls him Brother Black Dragon. The young man approaches and calls him Black Dragon, surprising the hero with the revelation. Awkwardly, he asks how the kid found out and thinks he's been caught red-handed. The colleague says he had a hunch, and the guy asks if side gigs are forbidden there. The superior says that in principle it's fine, but to be careful with the boss. The man says he's busy and starts to leave, but the protagonist calls him back. The guy then approaches and says he has something important to give to his colleague. He reminds him of the favor about the equipment industry he asked for the other day. With a flash drive in hand, he explains that he collected all the data from his equipment. The colleague is shocked that he finished so quickly, even with so much data. The hero says a good opportunity to measure the data came up and thinks about his plans. The man thanks him, saying he was in a bind because he has no talent for games. The protagonist then asks when he will interpret all the collected data. The guy explains he's going to pause a project and that he'll finish the analysis over the weekend. Without a second thought, the hero offers to help, and the colleague is surprised. The scene cuts to the late afternoon in the city, with a beautiful orange sky on the horizon. In his bed, the protagonist puts on the gear and prepares to enter the game. Lying down and ready to log in, he thinks he'll start streaming on his own channel. With a blue glow, the guy is transported to the virtual world once more. He appears in the middle of a bustling city with several other players around. Walking through the streets, he looks for the button to start the stream and soon finds it. A window appears, and the chat immediately starts sending him several messages live. A butterfly of light appears, indicating that the stream is working perfectly. With a smile, he introduces himself and announces he'll be streaming directly from now on. The chat gets hyped up, and the guy is surprised by the speed of the messages appearing. With over 4,000 viewers, the hero realizes just how popular he has become. To control the flow, he activates slow mode and asks everyone to subscribe to the channel. He notices the chat is talking a lot about the tips and says he doesn't mind elaborating. With a thoughtful look, the hero remembers there's a poll feature in the settings. He then decides he'll use the new function to decide what to do next. With that, he opens the poll panel and prepares the options for the public vote. At that exact moment, his friend arrives excitedly, and the guy says the chat was crazy about him. The blonde guy makes a cute face and jokes that deep down, everyone there really likes him. The hero complains about the chat speed, and his colleague says he needs to feel the vibe. Suddenly, the protagonist gets startled, and his friend notices he started a poll. He explains that the chat was arguing, and that he can announce the result of the vote. With a shout of joy, the colleague announces that the option to refuse tips won by a landslide. With the poll closed, the hero asks if they should proceed to the main story. With an excited shout, the duo announces they will start the game's main story. The scene focuses on the imposing Adventurers Guild on a beautiful blue sky day. The blonde guy celebrates that they're finally going to play, but the hero teases him for stalling. With a mischievous smile, he denies it and says he was waiting to play together with his friend. The protagonist then asks how long the first episode of the story should take. The colleague replies that following the standard route, the quest should take about 2 weeks. He hands over a main quest guide that players call the standard route. The hero flips through the book and reads that he needs to defeat the corrupt mayor of Edlin City. With a smile, he remembers that his story has already deviated from the others from the very beginning. The guy observes 2 guards taking a man into custody and questions his own path. He thinks that he can't advance by following the same methods everyone else uses. With a confident smile, the hero decides he will follow his own path from now on. The protagonist tells his friend to go ahead, since he's the party leader. The colleague then replies that he'll focus on interacting with the chat and leaves the hard work to him. Excited, the blonde guy tells the hero that a cutscene will start as soon as they enter. The guy pushes the large wooden door, and an intense light emerges from the other side. The scene focuses on a giant tree that holds up the sky in the middle of the great ocean. On its trunk is written a phrase about discovering the unknown being called Erfurt. The phrase is considered to be the creator's will, and many set out in search of this truth. With his eyes closed, the hero remembers his journey to find this Erfurt. Back at the guild, he seems determined to uncover the truth, no matter what. A main quest notification appears, asking him to find someone named Meal. The friend is surprised by the generous reward for a simple conversation with the NPC. The guy then asks if they should first go find this Meal in the guild. The colleague says he heard she's very unfriendly and gets a little worried about the quest. Suddenly, a girl with cat ears appears with her back to them at the location. The young woman is busy putting on makeup and completely ignores the 2 adventurers. With a smile, the hero asks when she'll be done getting ready to help them. The lady asks for a moment while applying lipstick with a very alluring and mysterious look. The guy agrees and asks whose perfume is on her table. The hero says the perfume is too common for her style, and her ears twitch. The girl stops putting on her makeup and stares at him with a serious, suspicious expression. With a smile, he says he has a perfume that would perfectly suit the lady. The young woman scoffs and says she won't fall for a trick as cheap as that. The blonde guy laughs and says his pickup line was really bad, and the girl completely ignores him. The guy then reveals a rare flower that is a top-tier perfume ingredient. He offers the flower and suggests she try making a perfume with that ingredient. Glistening petals float in the air, and a delicious fragrance spreads throughout the room. The girl is mesmerized by the scent and can't believe what she's smelling. She shouts with joy upon recognizing the flower and takes it, her eyes shining with emotion. The young woman climbs onto the table and demands to know where he got such a rare flower. The colleague asks where he got the item, and the hero nervously evades the question. The scene cuts to the previous night in the ice cave, where the duo was before. The system announces that the recall has been cancelled due to interference from the spirit Sylph. The little bird appears and starts flying around the protagonist, getting his attention. Sylph then flies to the back of the cave, and the guy understands he needs to follow it. At the back of the grotto, he finds the flowers and thanks the spirit for its help. Back in the present, the hero teases about whether he should give the flower to the girl or not. With a smile, he says they need to talk first, and the lady despairs at the idea. Impatient, the young woman grabs a pile of papers and starts explaining the situation. She explains that Edlin is a port city and that finding Erfurt is the world's objective, but intentions vary among the three factions that exist on the game's continent. The hero says he knows the Kingdom of Raven is on the side of the group's most radical members. The girl confirms this and says they are recruiting an investigation team now. Only the most powerful join the team and gain a lot of prestige from it. The guy understands that he needs to prove his skills to join the team. The lady agrees and says that by completing requests, important people will notice him. With an alluring look, she asks him to hurry up and give her the flower already. A notification appears, confirming that the first part of the quest has been completed. The friend celebrates, and the chat complains that it took them a week just to talk to her. The new main quest appears, and now the hero needs to prove his skills to everyone. The girl tells him to choose a request from the board, and the guy thinks about hunting monsters. He knows that simple quests are the standard, but thinks he would do that if he were a regular player. With a focused look, the protagonist finally finds the perfect quest for him on the board. The guy then chooses a quest to investigate a dungeon, leaving his friend surprised. The lady asks if he's really going to do that, and the hero confirms, not understanding the problem. With a mocking smile, the girl says that obviously, he won't be able to complete it.